Ja. Og så her.
Det er for at du åpnet den i tillegg.
Altså jeg slo jo av PC-en.
Ja.
Ja.
Den er satt på så automatisk åpner selv. Når du åpner den manuelt, så vil den prøve å starte
Og
automatisk.
så den også går på automatisk?
Ja, det er OBS som åpner automatisk. Ja.
Ok, men det er mulig at
Vi bare krysser ut det.
Bare sånn?
Ja.
Ok, så nå er det ikke noe stress.
Nei.
Ok, jeg kan jo ikke PC. Og så den. Da er det gjennompredd. Oi, helvete, det datt da. Å, fy faen, det datt. I helvete, det datt.
Based on debt.
Fy faen, det datt.
Contracts are sometimes used by hospitals to staff the worst shifts and the sickest
Fytti
patients
helvete, det
least
knakk.
experienced nurses, according to some of the 1,700 nurses O'Neill's union surveyed. In the past decade, these contracts have been used by a wide
Fy
range of
faen, det
hospitals,
datt.
including HCA, which says
Men du, nå er alt borte der.
programs are more comprehensive and substantive than any standard job
Jo, men altså,
orientation. The other
jeg
thing
kommer ikke
HCA
inn på
and many
transaksjonene mine.
hospitals say is there just
Det er
aren't
noe
enough
gærent her, det kan
nurses
ikke
or
være sånn. Nå
nursing
er alt borte.
There are plenty of licensed nurses, but
herregud,
there's
hva
a
er dette for
real
noe piss?
lack of safe nursing jobs.
In
det her
Utah,
er bare
Bree
teit.
Fellows also signed an HCA contract. If she
Jeg
quit
kan ikke
before
holde på
2
sånn i
years, she'd have to
treningssession.
pay back the $10,000 signing
Jeg kan ikke
bonus
bruke
they
mer
gave
tid
her,
på PC-en enn jeg
as
skal på
well as
TV.
up to
Det funker ikke.
$10,000 in training costs.
Where's the hedgehog?
Fellows, who had 2 kids under 2 at the time, accepted a job on the overnight shift in labor and delivery. But 6 months later, she was pregnant, exhausted, and begging, she says, to work the day shift.
She said, "You're brand new. No, you can't."
Were there some moments while you
Å,
were
fy
doing this
faen, nå traff jeg bra da.
that you just thought, I'm
Det er
not
flaks
safe.
uflaksen.
I'm not safe for these patients. I'm not safe for myself.
Yes. Just like not catching things that I should have, like just staring at the
Jeg klikker,
screen
Morten.
at 3 a.m.
Jeg
is
klikker
just
så jævlig, for det her er
very
så
scary.
jævlig amatør.
After 11 and a half months,
Dette
she
er
quit.
så
The
amatør at
hospital
jeg skal
sent
bruke
letters
så lang
demanding she
tid
return her
på bare
upfront
se
bonus
det
of
som jeg skal se.
$10,000 as well as $6,000 to repay her training.
It was very much a slap in the face, like this has to be wrong.
At jeg skal bruke tid på dette her,
Frightened, she and her husband
det
took
skulle
out
vært
a
lov.
new credit card and paid the $14,000 the hospital agreed to take.
These contracts are bad for nurses and they're bad for patients. With debt hanging over their head, a nurse has a much
Jeg
harder
må puste med
time
magen, for det er
speaking
helt
out.
for meg sånn.
HCA now tells us that since we started reporting on these contracts 2 months ago, they've decided not to use them
Å,
anymore.
fytte
Though they
faen.
decline to say
Den er
whether
like
they will
treig.
enforce the contracts nurses have already signed or reimburse nurses like Bree Fellows. Meanwhile, the federal government is getting involved, Vicky. The Federal Trade Commission recently proposed a rule
Fy faen, nå
banning
tjener jeg penger.
contracts like these, which are being
Fytti
used in an
helvete, nå tjener jeg
ever-increasing
penger.
number of industries, not just
Den er
nursing.
så
Fascinating and
treig.
important for people to see how it works and what happens. You think 2 years might go by quickly, but lots of circumstances can change. Yeah. Thank you so much, Cynthia. You are watching NBC News Daily, and you can watch us for free 24/7 on our streaming network, NBC News Now, wherever you
Faen,
stream.
nå
the
traff jeg
news
så
continues.
jævlig. Det tok vi hele dag, ass. Fytti satan. Men jeg tror ikke trade nå, for jeg får ikke gjort noe. Jeg får ikke trade her nå. Skal jeg scalpe her nå, så stopper det opp. Jeg skal ha et par tikk, så skal jeg gå ut, og så skal jeg gå inn og sånn. Jeg får ikke scalpe den trege driten her. Så... Ja, nå var det ikke så trege, nå plutselig løsnet seg litt. Sjekk nå, Morten. Nå gjør vi cash nå.
Jævlig dårlig musikk.
Det er ikke musikk, det er nyheter.
Fortsatt. Jævlig dårlig musikk.
Ta gevinst. Der, ute. Fy faen! Nå har vi tjent mye penger, boys. Vi har tjent mye penger. Vi har tjent mye penger. Penger. Penger og pond. Penger og pondpokker. Nei, jeg skal shorte mer. Hvis jeg kan få trade den dritten her, så.
Thanks for tuning in. I'm Gotti Schwartz. Here are the stories we're following tonight. Storms keep coming here in California. The U.S. government just declassified this video. A lot more stories trending like crazy on social media.
Shorta på nytt nå, på det lov.
Against young voters. What's the state of
Shorta på det lov.
what is going on when
Kall meg gæren.
trends there? Another mind-bending story on artificial
Kall meg klingeren.
This is what my voice sounds like when I clone it. That wasn't me. You gotta see this. Stay tuned now. Weeknights at 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific on NBC News Now.
Ja, men jeg tør ikke på Discorden, for det låser seg. Alt låser seg, det henger seg. Men jeg får ikke trede så som jeg har lyst til å trede. Alt låser seg hele tiden. I dag har jeg realisert over 40 000 kroner. Etter tap, for jeg dreit meg 2 ganger på CPI-tallene, for folk er tjukke i huet. Så jeg har tjent inn nå nesten 11 000.
According to the administration, this is an investment in the Pacific region to counter China.
Well, Vice President Kamala Harris is once again making history. The White House says she will give the commencement address at West Point Military Academy. This makes her the first woman ever to serve as speaker in the school's 221-year history.
After a nearly 3-month absence,
Roter han,
Senator
Morten?
Feinstein is set to return to the
Roter
Senate.
han,
She's
Morten?
expected to cast her first vote today
Hæ?
since February. Senator Feinstein
snakker om?
missed 91 floor votes during her time
Du,
recovering.
Morten har lagd jævlig god mat og rydda. Du skal ikke rote etter han.
Services Task Force is a panel of experts that sets precautionary care guidelines. The group
Hvorfor
is
Morten
now
har lagd
advising
jævlig
women
god mat, liksom?
nationwide
Den er sånn
to get
sjukt god.
screened for breast cancer
Er det
early
beste
on
versjonen?
in life.
Ja, den beste han har lagd.
Previous guidelines, most women were instructed to get mammograms every other year at the age of 50, but now the task force says the standard age should be lowered to 40. So what does this mean for women and early detection? We're going to get into it right now with NBC News medical contributor Dr. Natalie Azar. Dr. Azar, great to see you. So what drove this new recommendation from the task force, and why aren't they recommending yearly mammograms like other major organizations?
Yeah, basically, Vicki, the task force has said that they are using new evidence that informed this guidance. In terms of why they are not recommending every year, they basically said that they feel that doing it every other year will increase the survival by about 20%, which is definitely a significant number. That means about 8,000 more lives per year.
Ja, men
that
går
are
det ikke
saved.
jævlig,
And
går det ikke
then
jævlig
another
tregt da,
doing it
hvis jeg,
every
hvis jeg gjør det?
has to do with false positives, which, as you know,
Er du
can be
sikker?
quite
For han
distressing
ble
for
jævlig, han blir jo
individuals.
så, han
I
er
do have
plutselig
to say, though, that
drittreig.
there has
Nå er han
been
kjapp
some
plutselig. Nå
expert,
er han jævlig kjapp.
pushback on
Hvordan
this
faen kom jeg
notion
på her da?
that women would
Ja.
rather, not have the psychological distress of a false positive, rather than actually knowing that they're okay. We have seen the rate of breast cancer increase by about 2% per year.
Ja, nå er han kjapp, nå kan jeg skaupe.
Particularly in that age group 40 to 49, where it's particularly concerning. Those earlier breast cancers tend to be more aggressive, even more so in black women who die at rates twice that of women, white women.
Yeah, it's just a little harder to remember, though, right? I mean, every year on my birthday, that's a good indicant. Every other year, harder. Who's going to pay for this? If women start getting these mammograms every other year at age 40, that's 5 additional screenings before turning 50. Is insurance going to cover it?
Insurance has to cover it. Fortunately, the CDC has essentially
Den tredje er
obligated
galskap,
insurance
den tredje.
companies to cover mammograms. The ACA also covers mammograms. And I think it's important to note that while the task force is a very powerful and very influential body, there are multiple other medical organizations, including the American Cancer Society, American Colleges of Radiology and Obstetrics and Gynecology, who really advocated for earlier mammograms
Det
than
var
age
så jävla
50
piss.
for years now. So many women
Pissvin
have
3
been
da
doing this
ikke så
already.
smart,
But we
skjønner
know
du.
that the task force has a lot of impact,
Unnskyld, ikke
particularly
jeg
among
tror det.
primary care doctors who will
Ja,
follow
jeg tror
these
det.
guidelines and hopefully will capture more women this way.
Thank you so much, NBC News medical contributor Dr. Natalie Azar. Go get a mammogram.
Well, Cynthia, as we reported earlier this hour, Title 42 is set to expire tomorrow night. Over the next few days, you may see some more headlines about the immigration policy, so we're going to provide a little bit of context. NBC News correspondent Zincle Esamoah explains the history of Title 42 and what's happening at the southern border right now.
It's going to be chaotic. Just behind me.
Hundreds of migrants.
The conditions here are miserable.
Attempting to cross the Rio Grande for weeks.
Sleeping on the street.
Pushing border communities to the brink.
Our resources are stretched, and they're stretched quite thin.
At the center of it all, Title 42, the public health measure, was introduced in 2020 by the Trump administration.
Give Customs and Border Protection the tools it needs to prevent the transmission of the virus.
Before Title 42, migrants could seek asylum and remain in the United States while their case was being considered. Through CDC emergency powers, Title 42 allowed the government to quickly expel migrants without screening for asylum.
Functionally, Title 42 has kind of created a bottleneck of people who are seeking asylum or otherwise kind of seeking entry to the United States.
Still, when Biden took office, the policy remained, though their stance has continually shifted.
The previous administration separated families and wasted tax dollars. We have been trying to undo that. We have been trying to make sure that we do it in a moral way.
Attempts to end Title 42 in 2022 were met with lawsuits from Republican attorneys general. Then, following a surge of migrants, Biden's administration announced an expansion of Title 42, providing some legal pathways for migrants, but also expediting migrant removal.
My administration is taking several steps to stiffen enforcement for those who try to come without a legal right to stay.
In January, the United Nations saying the move undermines international human rights law. Now, in El Paso, Texas, migrants have amassed in the area, waiting for Customs and Border Patrol to process their case. Nonprofit Opportunity Center for the Homeless feeding nearly 1,000 people 3 meals a day. Their normal capacity closer to 200.
Once Title 42 lifts, what's going to happen for you in your work?
No matter how prepared we are, we simply aren't going to be prepared for the number of individuals there.
While Title 42 may soon be over, the growing humanitarian crisis at the border is far from done. Zincle Esamoah, NBC News.
$24 million. That's how much California will pay to settle with the family of a man who
Vi ser
died
träff från oss
in
idag,
police
Morten.
custody. Lawyers for the family
Vi ser
say
träff från oss
it's the
idag.
largest civil rights settlement of its kind in state history. It comes after the 2020 death of Edward Bronstein. He was taken into custody after a traffic stop in Southern California. Police were trying to take a blood sample for Bronstein when video shows the officers forcing him down to a mat while handcuffed. Then you see officers holding Bronstein face down while he screams, "I can't breathe." The Los Angeles County coroner says his death was caused by, quote,
Eirik Gudsen sa jeg skulle gå long i dag, da. Var ikke det greier?
During restraint by law enforcement. NBC News correspondent Steve Patterson joins us now from Los Angeles. Steve, hello today. Why did his family say he was struggling with police officers, and why is his case so significant?
Well, significant, I think, in a few reasons, too. The major ones are fiscally, as you laid out, of course, alongside its impact to the law and the style of these settlements.
Jeg har treda inn og ut et par og 40 000, så sitter jeg med 15 etter sånn gærlig.
The second largest civil rights payment to a family of
Nei, men jeg gjør det hver dag nå. Hver dag. Det er ikke noe stress. Jeg trekker på. Det er ikke noe bra. Kommer til å kjenne det hver jævlig. 100%. Gjør du det? Å ja, kom etterpå. Kjempekoselig. Morten har laget god mat til oss og nydelig og alt.
I've seen the full 18 minutes. It is haunting, very similar to watching that George Floyd video. Bronstein screaming, "I can't breathe," with allegedly 7 officers pinning him down on top of him, not providing any sort of resuscitation 11 minutes after.
Baby, jeg jobber nå. Hør på meg.
So the impact of that, alongside all of these police incidents that we've seen over the last few years, incredibly significant. Cynthia.
Thank you so much for that. You would think that "I can't breathe" might be indication enough. Steve Patterson for us.
Well, a man in upstate New
Leila
York has
har
been
korona.
arrested in a disturbing child sextortion case. Sextortion is when a person coerces a victim into sending explicit images, often through the internet or social media, then uses those images to blackmail the victim.
The FBI is warning of a sharp rise in cases like this involving predators from different parts of the country. But this next case is disturbing law enforcement as the alleged extorter
Nå kan du se jeg.
local middle school
Ja, du kan komme og se da.
Here's Connor Wright with our Syracuse, New York affiliate.
Når du kommer nå, så kan du se jeg.
One brave
Sånn.
victim came forward to stop it all.
Louis Fratangelo Jr. faces decades in prison, according to the district attorney, all because a middle schooler was able to speak up and say something.
If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be where we are today.
Manly's police sergeant Ken Hatter says
Yay.
the memory of the victims was crucial. He says
Yay.
the 3-month investigation with state police
Det blir hjerneskadda å sitte på tredjesmens.
disguised himself as a 13-year-old girl online and started chatting with a Pine Grove middle schooler through social media. At one point,
Er det mye penger å tjene på sånne copytreninger? Det vet du om det er mye penger å tjene på det?
in person. Police say he eventually used this connection to access the Snapchat accounts of 5 other girls.
Jeg tror du kan bli ranka på sånne her greier. At du kan trade, og så blir du ranka.
And then use them to
Jeg tror du kan bli
blackmail the
ranka.
kids. Hatter says too often in these so-called sextortion cases, the perpetrator is someone far away.
Er det scam, de greiene der?
It's almost gratifying to discover Fratangelo lives in Van Buren.
Finally, we can get some closure to victims, you know, and make an arrest and, like, you know, obviously stop this behavior because typically it's not local.
Once they executed a search warrant, they discovered far more than the alleged Snapchat sextortion. 2 illegal AR-style rifles, body armor, and thousands of child porn images and videos. Fratangelo also faces a rape charge in the 3rd degree for a sexual relationship with an underage teen, not related to the Snapchat messaging.
I mean, he's looking literally at decades and decades in state prison if he's convicted of anything.
District Attorney Bill Fitzpatrick says one person racking up all these different charges is rare. His office pushed for $1 million bail, but the judge set bail at $250,000, and Fratangelo posted, meaning he's now free. Something the DA wants to change, petitioning to see where Fratangelo got the money, given he's unemployed.
Again, he's not been convicted of anything, but if in fact he is a perpetrator who has sex with children, those people never stop. They never get cured. And the only thing that stops them is separating them.
Oppsummering, det har ikke gjort på mange, mange år.
NBC News Daily, I'm Connor White.
NASA scientists are on a mission to study the ocean's surface like never before. We take you along for the expedition. Next, more NBC News Daily. After this.
Ligger på massiv støtte her da.
It's good to be with you tonight. The debt ceiling. Here's why this matters. Please don't have your eyeballs glaze over. Here's why this matters. Talk to us about what we're supposed to call this. Is it a bailout? Is it a backstop? There's a difference because it matters whose money is being used to prop up these banks. We think we're getting close to this news conference. I will be honest with people. This is like an awkward moment where we think we're like right there. You're gonna have to like tap dance with us maybe a little bit. I do have my tap dancing shoes on, not to worry.
Tok gevinst på halve der.
To expand ongoing climate change research, a team of NASA scientists is exploring more than just the final frontier of space. They are also studying Earth's oceans to better understand how they impact our atmosphere. NBC News correspondent Jacob Sobroff gets a bird's-eye view of all the action.
Our journey begins at NASA's Ames Research Center in the heart of Silicon Valley. Here, scientists are on a mission to study the ocean's surface like never before. And to do that, they'll need to take one of these.
What's up, everybody? What should I expect?
We're going to fly about 20 north-south lines over the Pacific. Should be real enjoyable. In order for your safety, we want to have you in a NASA flight suit.
In a flight suit?
So, get that on.
All right, gotta follow orders. We'll put this thing on.
NASA's S-Mode mission, short for Sub-Mesoscale Ocean Dynamics Experiment, don't worry, I didn't understand it either, deploys a fleet of aircraft, ships, and marine robotics to observe how eddies, whirlpools, and currents interact with the atmosphere and will ultimately shape the Earth's climate. NASA's deemed this work critical because while the surface makes up only 2% of the ocean, it's where nutrients, gases, and heat all converge, and that contributes to Earth's greenhouse effect. Holly Bender is NASA's lead scientist on today's mission.
Check this out. What Holly's looking at right now is what? It's the little portal that you're going to do experiments through?
Yeah, it's the window to our instruments. So that's what's be looking down at the ocean.
You basically got to make sure that it's clean.
Squeaky clean.
And after
Du kan få en liten rekyl opp her, tar imot på støtten.
The plane flies at an altitude of 39,000 feet and
Spørs bare om jeg skal gi meg mens leken er god. Jeg har tjent masse penger i dag.
But in order to collect data, the equipment requires clear skies above and below.
There's plenty of clouds down there right now, and that's not an ideal situation for the instruments to get the measurements that they want. So we're going to continue to head west until we get to an area that doesn't look as much like we see down below us right now.
Up in the cockpit, pilots Greg Slover and Brian Baxley work in lockstep with the scientists.
Nå er det 2 timer igjen til close, og da har du veldig mange som vil sikkert kjøpe fra Falsme, ikke sant? Så du kan få sånne trøkk opp på close. Jeg vil ikke være med på det. For folk er tjukke i huet. Folk er rett og slett tjukke i huet. Skjønner jo faen ikke hva makro betyr.
After about an hour executing the flight plan, Holly and Regina Eckert put the finishing touches on their research.
So we're on our final line right now.
Final line of the day.
Tusen hjertelig, Krise. Den siste treden her kunne jeg spart meg for, men det var en jævla risiko, da sa jeg.
All the data that was collected, that's when you're going to be able to see.
Yeah, we can see you know, amounts of chlorophyll or phytoplankton. So at this point, we'll stop recording, and that'll do it for today. We've stopped recording on our final line, so you are clear to maneuver.
Copy, and confirm it's just RTB from here.
RTB, copy.
Okay, coming right.
Return to base, right?
Jeg lå på å lukte her.
Yes.
You're hired.
Jacob Soboroff, NBC News.
One of the largest military bases in the U.S. is embarking on a new legacy. The Texas Army base, formerly known as Fort Hood, has been renamed after the first Latino four-star general. NBC News correspondent Jacob Ward has more on the reasons behind the change.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
It's known as the Great Place, a reference to the base's size and armored might. This Texas military installation has a new name.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Fort Cavazos, Texas.
Fort Cavazos, named for Army General and Mexican-American Richard Cavazos.
General Cavazos was a proven combat leader who repeatedly demonstrated courage, selfless service, and an irrepressible warrior spirit.
Cavazos, who died in 2017, once served as commander here when it was named Fort Hood. During his 33-year Army career, he served in the Korean and Vietnam Wars, receiving 2 Distinguished Service Crosses and rising all the way to 4-star general, the first Hispanic American to hold that rank.
I challenge all Hispanic in the service, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, and the Coast Guard, to be all that you can be.
People like General Cavazos helped make the Army what it is today.
This renaming ceremony in Texas, part of a larger mandate by Congress to remove Confederate names from military bases.
All of these installations have to reflect the values that we have as a country and those of the Army.
Fort Hood, built in 1942, was named after Confederate General John Bell Hood.
In many ways, what we do in this naming redesignation process is look for soldiers who reflect our values, who recognize and exemplify what we want to define the Army to look like.
Now, as the first base named to honor a Latino service member, the Army hopes the great place will inspire the next generation of soldiers.
Let his name and all that it represents inspire us all every single day to live up to his legacy.
Jake Ward, NBC News.
You are watching NBC News Daily. Stay with us.
Vurderer å dekke meg nå, for hvis den kommer oppover nå, for nå er det snart close, så begynner folk å kjøpe og helt apekatter, og da gidder ikke jeg drive og trade.
Top story with that breaking news. This is just in, a lot of stories to get to. What do people need most right now? Did the state and or law enforcement drop the ball anywhere? Are we headed for a recession or a recovery? Migrant families now stranded in Mexico. What's the World Cup experience been like? The civilian effort is not just about fighting, it's also about helping.
Every night, it's your news playlist. Top story with Tom Llamas. Streaming weeknights at 7 on NBC News Now.
A mother-daughter team wants to change the way we snack.
They're the women behind Nevada-based company creating pretzels with a purpose. NBC's Dylan Dreyer has more.
Pretzels with a purpose.
We know life is challenging, but we want to see that, life is about a twist and it has to be a positive thing.
Elizabeth Galvin says every bite of food should bring joy, even the snacks.
Pretzel has been one of my favorite snacks since I grew up in south of France.
She came to the U.S. at age 26 and created Delice in 1992, a company that manufactures and sells several snack brands, many to the airline industry. But something was always missing. Elizabeth wanted to create something, well, stellar.
So was it the texture of the pretzel or the flavor that you thought really needed to be upgraded?
I think it was all of it. I think that for me, food is about, the taste, the texture, the color.
Elizabeth says she fondly remembers helping her parents with their bakery in France. So in creating the company, she turned to her daughter, Gina.
Gina, did you know you always wanted to work with your mom or vice versa?
My mom and I have always been extremely close, and almost to the point of like we feel like just like a magical connection.
For me, Gina is a spiritual child, and she has bring so much intensity in the way we do business. She questioned everything, and that has been wonderful because we try always to offer a better product.
Gina said her mom's persistence and passion for her work have always been an inspiration.
I remember our first time seeing the pretzels on shelf. It was tears in our eyes. It was such a culmination of a lot of hard work.
And a key ingredient, pretzels with a purpose. So they collaborate with emerging artists to bring their little pretzel packages to life.
And Gina, are you responsible for the artwork and the idea to put artists on the packaging? Can you tell me about that?
The concept did come from the years when I was making art with friends, and we were asking ourselves, gosh, how do we get out there in such a saturated market? And we were thinking maybe this bag can have a greater purpose while it's here. We tested it with just a piece of my art that I did with a friend. And
oh, wow. Mom, is that it? I love it.
Mom, that's funny.
The designs took off, with many of those bags landing in airline snack baskets.
We've gotten more distribution, and we're now in over 3,000 stores nationwide.
What goes into the packages is equally important, Elizabeth says, as the Carson City, Nevada bakery runs 7 days a week, 24 hours a day to produce the 4 pretzel flavors.
So how many pounds of pretzels have you guys created? I'm sure you keep track, right?
We do around 15 million pounds. We get every day, every 8-hour truckload of flour. Also, we put our little secret ingredient, which is love, in everything that we do. And we hope people taste them, or at least feel it when they're eating our pretzel.
The duo divide and conquer the enormous workload. Elizabeth is CEO, and Gina tackles marketing.
Daughters and moms can sometimes butt heads. How do you guys work around that?
We never experience any issue. Gina and I had a super deep respect for each other, but also we have a lot of respect for our space.
I think what I have an appreciation for is that moms are superheroes. And I think that if I didn't work for my mom, or if I wasn't related to her, she would still be my idol.
I love everything about that story, and I can report those pretzels are delicious. I had them on Alaska Airlines. My girls love them too.
Taster's choice.
Okay. Well, our big thanks to Dylan Dreyer for that report. And we understand 6 full-time artists are currently working on those pretzel bags, but Gina says hundreds more are making submissions. So get your artwork in if you're creative.
All right. Well, here's what's trending now. Live Nation's annual concert week is happening right now with a wide variety of summer concert tickets for $25. Performances include Shania Twain, Janet Jackson, and many others. The offer will last until Tuesday.
Country superstar Morgan Wallen is postponing 6 weeks of shows after a vocal injury. On Instagram, Wallen said he had taken 10 days of vocal rest, but felt terrible after his shows last weekend. He says doctors told him he has vocal fold trauma and advised him not to sing or speak at all. Wallen says he's working on rescheduling those canceled shows.
I'm Cynthia McFadden.
I'm Vicki Wynn. You are watching NBC News Daily.
Vi har akkurat snakket om det, Jakob. På close så kan det gå bra opp. Nå blir det faktisk å gå long her nå. Close er ofte jævla sterkt. Åja. Nei, du shorter ikke her nå. Jeg shorta deg, for jeg har tjent så jævla mye penger i dag, så jeg tok en sånn risk... En risk for om det bryter ned. Det var kun en sånn der kalkulert bet. Jeg vil ikke bedt noen andre gjøre det. Og det er 2 timer igjen, og på closen så går alt pleier å gå opp på close. Oi, faen, jeg raper av helvete.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kate Snow. And I'm Zinklea Samoa. NBC News Daily starts right now.
Today, Wednesday, May 10th, 2023, price drop. New numbers showing inflation in America is easing up. The impact on your wallet and what this says about the economy.
The Santos scandal, the controversial congressman now officially charged in a federal investigation, the laundry list of allegations and the consequences he could face.
Breaking her silence, E. Jean Carroll goes on the record after a jury finds former President Trump liable for assaulting and defaming her.
I'm overwhelmed with joy and happiness and delight for the women in this country.
The message she hopes the verdict will send.
And oh, the places you'll go. Graduation may be exciting, but it sure can be stressful too. We'll have the best ways to help soon-to-be college students in your life thrive.
Living that right now. It is 11 a.m. in Portland, 1 p.m. in New Orleans, 2 p.m. in New York City.
That's right. We have a lot of news to get to this hour, but we begin with some encouraging news on the economy. Nearly everything we pay for is still more expensive than a year ago. But for the 10th month in a row, inflation is trending downward.
Now, take a look at this chart, and you can really see it, that red bar all the way on the right. A new report from the Bureau of Labor Statistics says the inflation rate was 4.9% higher in April compared to the same time last year. That's a lower number than expected, and as you can see, a massive improvement from the peak of inflation last June. NBC News business and data reporter Brian Chung is with us, crunching the numbers. Brian, break it down. Where are we seeing prices drop, and where are they still staying kind of high?
Yeah, let's crunch numbers and give a little bit of context, because these numbers can be a little bit confusing, because prices,
Ready to go long nå.
mistake about it, are still going up, but they're going up at a slower rate than we've seen in the past. So 4.9%, that's how much more things got expensive
bare litt mer
between
bevegelse
this
fra
year
gjør
and
nå.
April last year, which is a tick down from the 5% that we had seen in March, and quite a big fall from the 9% that we saw in the summer last year. So if you break this down by category, you're looking year over year, you can see where things got more expensive and where things got less expensive. So food, 7.7% more expensive in April than this time last year. Shelter, just the cost of roof over your head, over 8% more expensive. But gasoline, a lot cheaper now than it was this time last year, down 12.2%. Welcome news to a lot of those fueling up at the pump.
I'm sure. I mean, then looking at the bigger picture, Brian, Americans are still spending money, even though the cost of goods remains high. So why exactly is that, and what kind of spending habits should we expect this summer?
Yeah, well, I mean, these are April numbers, so it does tell you a little bit about what the American consumer looks like going into peak travel season. But I've got some more numbers for you. When we talk about just the big plans for summer getaways, Expedia is saying 25% year-over-year increase in just the amount of searches for potential summer travel. Over 60% of Americans saying they intend to take the same amount of days compared to 2022. And interestingly, we're also taking a look at Mother's Day spend ahead of this weekend. Interesting statistics coming from the National Retail Federation. $35.7 billion expected to be spent this year. That's $4 billion more than last year. Not only are things more expensive, but people might be getting a few extra roses for their moms. Including myself.
The moms will love it, right?
Yeah, Mother's Day is Sunday, by the way.
It is.
For all of you.
Yes, Ryan Jung, thank you so much. And New York Congressman George Santos, whose short career in politics has been plagued with controversy, is now facing a 13-count federal indictment. The New York Republican turned himself in earlier today and faces charges that include money laundering, wire fraud, and theft of public funds. House Republican leadership urged patience as the legal process plays out.
Santos was never put on committee, so he won't serve on committee. He'll go through his time of trial, and we'll find out how the outcome is.
In America, there's a presumption of innocence, but they're serious charges. He's going to have to go through the legal process. But we're going to continue to work to root out fraud, and there's lots of it.
NBC News correspondent Valerie Castro is outside the courthouse in central Islip, New York. Valerie, so what are the details of these 13 charges?
Well, Zinkley, first of all, we want to say we are still awaiting the results of the arraignment for George Santos. His first court appearance was scheduled to begin about half an hour ago, so we're waiting for any developments. As for that indictment, it was unsealed earlier this morning, and it detailed those 13 federal charges. Here's how they break down. There are 7 counts of wire fraud, 3 counts of money laundering, 1 count of theft of public funds, and 2 counts of providing false statements to the House. Conviction on the most serious of these charges. It carries a sentence of up to 20 years in prison. Prosecutors accuse George Santos of defrauding political donors. They say he solicited campaign funds, but instead funneled that money to personal accounts to pay off personal debts, including credit cards and even paying for some designer clothing. They say there was also fraud related to unemployment insurance, COVID-related unemployment benefits. They say he received up to $24,000 in COVID relief money meant for unemployed New Yorkers at the time that he was, in fact, employed. They also accuse him of falsifying financial disclosure forms. So a lot of those charges, again, we're awaiting any news as a result of that arraignment here behind me. Zinkley?
And Valerie, I know we heard from GOP leadership, but the reality is he was elected by the people, right? So what are we hearing from the rest of New York's congressional delegation?
So representatives on both sides of the aisle are calling for his resignation. Mike Lawler, Mark Molinaro, both New York State representatives, Republican representatives are calling for his resignation. Elise Stefanik, she is the one who is urging everyone to let this legal process play out. Again, after the arraignment, we're waiting to see if George Santos has anything to say based on these charges. Zinkley?
All right, all eyes on this one. Valerie Castro, thank you.
Now to the crisis on the U.S. border. Tomorrow, the COVID-era policy called Title 42 will officially expire. As a result, immigration officials are expecting an influx of migrants at the border. More than 500 troops have been sent to the region. Here's President Biden on what to expect in the coming weeks.
It's going to be chaotic for a while.
Republicans are criticizing the decision to end Title 42, and tomorrow the House will vote on a GOP-backed border security bill. NBC News correspondent Guad Venegas is near the border in San Diego for us today. Guad, we just heard the president saying it's going to be chaotic. What's being done where you are to kind of anticipate the chaos?
Well, Kate, they did build a processing center in the area here in San Diego near Old Time Mesa. That's a few miles just east of where we are located. That initially was built to help some of that processing for the overflow that would come from Texas, right? But here we are now, just before
Jeg er lang da,
was lifted.
som dere sikkert ser.
We have hundreds of migrants, a camp where we've been at for days now. That keeps
Jeg
growing.
dekker alle shortene mine så ikke jeg er lang.
Women, more children. Overwhelming Border Patrol. I spoke with a Border Patrol agent just hours ago who told me, look, there's nothing we can do. We're still at capacity. So now what we're going to focus on is helping a lot of the migrants that are here and taking
Folk er jo tjukke i huet, så må bare være med, liksom.
resources have been sent to the border.
Nei, nå er jeg pluss med 10 000. Jeg var i pluss med 15 000 i stad, så jeg tappte 15. Nei, jeg er pluss med 11 000. Jeg tappte 4 000 nettopp.
But we don't know if additional resources are coming specifically to San Diego. What they've done at the port of entry just east of us, Kate, is a drill. There's actually another drill expected to take place tonight of what they would do in a response if migrants were to rush that port of entry. So they're doing these drills to prepare for any type of migrant rush at the port of entry, but that's not something we've seen. In fact, we've been in Tijuana. We were there yesterday, and the shelters are at capacity. but we have not seen migrants that want to rush the port of entry. What we've seen is migrants arriving here and what is becoming a humanitarian crisis, Kate.
Yeah, and Congress, meantime, has been unable to come to an agreement on immigration reform, God, for years now. The crisis isn't new, but there is legislation, the Secure the Border Act of 2023. It's making its way through Congress. What do we know about that, and could it pass?
Well, Kate, Republicans are pushing that immigration bill, but the White House already issued a memo saying that if it were to pass, President Biden would veto that. There's reasons why Democrats don't agree with what's being proposed. One of the things that's being proposed in that is to build the border wall once again, and there would also be more restrictions to the way migrants can request asylum. There's currently an app that is used, CBP1 app that the Biden administration put out that has had a lot of glitches, but it has been one of the ways that migrants are seeking asylum legally. Democrats are saying that this new legislation would limit those legal pathways, among other reasons. Let's hear Congressmen, both a Republican and a Democrat, talking about this bill.
House Republicans are committed to solving this issue with the Secure the Border Act, which will finish the wall, advance border technology, and support our brave Border Patrol agents. And it will deliver on a key pillar of our commitment to America, a nation that is safe.
Well,
they want to waste billions and billions of taxpayer dollars on a medieval border wall, a 14th century solution that will not work to a 21st century challenge.
You know, they mentioned the border wall. What I can tell you from working here in California and in Texas, you can see the wall here, 2 barriers. In fact, one of the most sophisticated walls that we have in the U.S.-Mexico border is here in the San Diego area with 2 barriers, technology, and this goes from the ocean and inland. That's what San Diego has. And we are not seeing migrants, at least the days we've been here, that go over the wall and then the second wall and try to enter the U.S. illegally. What we see is migrants that come here to turn themselves in. So essentially, the border wall hasn't really made a difference because the migrants are not attempting to enter the U.S. and just go into the city, right, Kate? So they're coming to turn themselves in. So that's one of the arguments. What is necessary is immigration policy to try and see what can be done when it comes to the humanitarian crisis, to the migrants that are asking for asylums. And then, of course, there's the reasons behind all of this, the roots of migration, right? When I talk to the migrants, Kate, they tell me they don't completely understand immigration policy. And the reason why they're here is because of what's happening in their home country. So there's other reasons and other factors that have to be taken into consideration, Kate.
Yeah, it's very complex, and I'm so glad you're there for us. Thank you, God. Appreciate it.
And coming up, the urgent manhunt underway for 2 inmates who escaped to Philadelphia jail and the growing questions about just how they got out.
Plus, E. Jean Carroll breaks her silence after a jury finds former President Trump liable for assaulting and defaming.
Alltid de siste timene så pleier det også å være komme opp sånn som vi snakket om. Og da er det litt sånn derre får ikke trade av da. Det blir bare sånn, det er sånn make it or break it. Fett. Tor, det er ikke noe trading nå, det er liksom... Det kan gå rett opp mot close, det er liksom... Det er det som skjer hver dag. Short covering. Kan gå som faen, dette her, sånn. Nå henger han seg nå. Nå begynner PC-en å henge seg.
What is going to happen now? Going back and forth, Go ahead, this is it, right?
This is what it looks and feels.
With the latest, a bigger piece to the puzzle.
Here's some of the stories we're watching tonight.
How much water ultimately will be forced inlet?
Whenever it happens, wherever you are, NBC News, streaming free now.
There's new fallout today after that stunning verdict in the civil case filed against former President Trump by columnist E. Jean Carroll.
Yeah, a jury found that the former president is liable for sexually abusing Miss Carroll and defaming her. The jury awarded the author $5 million in damages. Carroll and her lawyer spoke out this morning on the Today Show.
I'm overwhelmed with joy and happiness and delight for the women in this country. Before yesterday, there was a concept of the perfect victim. The perfect victim always screams, always reports to the police, always makes note when it happened. And then her life is the perfect victim's life is supposed to fold up, and she's never sort of supposed to be happy again. And yesterday we demolished that old concept. It is gone. It is gone.
Let's bring in NBC News senior legal correspondent Laura Jarrett. She's with us on set. So Laura, hi. The civil jury, 6 men and 3 women, they found that former President Trump was liable for defamation and for sexual abuse. They did not find that he was liable for rape. Help us read that verdict.
I think it might be confusing for some folks, but it really just comes down to the technical definition of rape, which requires penetration. And I think on that score, her story just wasn't as crystal clear as it was when it came to some other elements, when she's describing the attack in vivid detail for the jury. And as she's describing it in the past, it's on that issue that it got tricky for her, I think, on sometimes. She has been remarkably consistent about a lot of the story, but just on that specific issue of the penetration, I think that's where they just decided she didn't meet her burden.
And Laura, we've heard from Trump's team. They've said they will appeal this, but what kind of argument do they need to craft in order to have a strong case?
It's going to be an uphill battle for them, specifically because the judge gave the former president a lot of opportunity, a lot of wiggle room. Some thought even more than he was required to. Remember, this is a civil case. Trump doesn't have to come if he doesn't want to, but the judge said, I'm going to give you a last-ditch effort, even as late as Sunday at 5 p.m., and he didn't take it. And because he didn't take it, I just think an appeal is going to be really hard here. It doesn't mean it won't happen. Doesn't mean he won't try. It's just going to be hard.
Because he didn't testify.
Yes, he didn't testify, and so instead the jury is left with his own words.
And Laura, there are numerous other allegations against the former president, quite frankly, of sexual harassment or abuse or a number of different things. This is the first time that a jury has found him civilly liable, right, for any kind of sexual misconduct. Could we see other women who have accused President Trump come forward on the heels of this and try their case too?
Well, of course, he's denied all of these claims, right? I mean, we've seen a variety of claims. And remember, Carroll's attorneys used 2 other women who had nothing to do with this case, but used it to show an MO, right? To show a pattern, to show she was more credible because, look, he's following exactly what he said he would do in the Access Hollywood tape. Whether more women come forward, they might. Remember, Carroll is using a new law which allows a 1-year window, so they have until November.
Ja, men jeg må ha pengene fra kølla.
Nope, November.
Laura Jarrett, thank you.
Sure.
Ja, men da må vi fikse det i morgen, for jeg må betale regningen i
New
morgen.
video is showing how some people were able to
men,
escape that horrific mass
han er
shooting in
Frankrike,
Allen,
ikke?
Texas, at a mall that left 8 people dead. The surveillance
skal
footage
se,
shows a restaurant worker leading people to safety through a back door, and it all comes as we were learning new information about the gunman. According to 2 U.S. officials, he was forced out of the military 15 years ago because of mental health concerns. NBC News correspondent Maggie Vespa has the latest.
The vigils continue here in Allen, where you can see behind me tents are now set up to protect mourners and this memorial from forecasted rain. And at the same time, a lot of questions still loom about how the alleged shooter, police say his name is 33-year-old Mauricio Garcia, was able to obtain the 8 weapons authorities say he had on him and in his car on Saturday when he carried out this mass attack, which they now say lasted
all of 4 minutes. The first reason for those questions was that the Army confirms back in 2008, Garcia was kicked out of basic training after 3 months for what they call general mental or physical health issues, and they won't specify if it was physical or mental. The second reason for the questions is that authorities say Garcia, in the weeks leading up to the attack, posted gratuitously on a Russian social media platform about his plans for this attack. They say he posted photos of this mall, a blueprint of the mall. He posted, they say, receipts for the guns and ammo that he had purchased, again, leading up to this. And they also say he posted a lot of rants against minorities, against women, and photos of his white power tattoos, including in some, you can see, swastikas. Authorities say they're looking into all of that. They're kind of at a loss for words, but that is part of their investigation. And of course, at the same time, the 8 victims here remembered, including among them 3 young children from 2 local families. The Mendoza sisters, Sophia and Daniela Mendoza, 8 and 11 years old. Their superintendent remembering them as rays of sunshine. There is another vigil planned for here tonight. In the meantime, this mall remains closed indefinitely. The owners of the Allen Premium Outlet saying in a statement they are outraged by the violence that continues to plague this country. Back to you.
Maggie Vespa, thank you. An author of a book about grief is now charged with killing her husband. Coming up, the bombshell allegations and what we've learned about the couple's marriage. You're watching NBC News Daily.
We're also streaming free 24/7 on NBC News Now. Watch us wherever you stream live. The news continues right after this.
Hopp opp, hva mener du? Er du long? Ja, jeg er short her nå. Kan like gjerne gå opp.
Your music is so familiar. What do you think when people start humming back your tunes? How you doing, Lester?
Welcome back. It's National Nurses Week, and today we're taking a closer look at HCA. Specifically, we're looking at the contracts the for-profit hospital chain requires new nurses to sign to work there.
Some nurses say those contracts put them in debt and risk not only their health, but the health of the hospital patients as well. NBC News senior investigative and legal correspondent Cynthia McFadden has our report.
Jackie Rum was excited to start her career as a registered nurse
Romeo,
at HCA Hospital.
du kan ta en håndkle i burute.
She says her job.
Du kan ta en håndkle i burute.
Was falling out.
I was losing weight. I mean, Jackie,
Slapp
you're
av, det er det eneste som gjør det.
talking about this.
Ja, da fikk jeg aldri målet
You're a
derfra.
little traumatized. Maybe I
Hva
wasn't
vil jeg ta
made
på?
to be a nurse. Well,
Ingenting.
in these conditions, I don't think
Det er
anybody
jævlig
was
ting i
made to
armen.
be a nurse.
Ja, det er ikke semmeløs du har da.
She's talking about relate to
Strekk.
understaffing.
Går det over?
NBC
Ja.
News has investigated at
Garantert.
HCA hospitals in 5 states, where some nurses and doctors say HCA's focus on profits, $5.6 billion last year, can put patients at risk.
The quality of care that we give is not what we want to give.
Ja, det går fint det, men vi må bare ta oss og få til å føre over penger.
13 months, she quit. But she had a problem. She'd signed a contract saying if she didn't work 2 years full-time, she'd have to pay back some of the $4,000 they said it cost to train
Ja,
her.
det går fint det.
Rum believes it wasn't training, but an 11-week orientation, which included basic onboarding, technical instruction,
Øyvind
and
på chatten nå,
shadowing an
eller?
experienced nurse.
We see these contracts as a form of indentured servitude.
Ikke ha med han
Bryn
der.
O'Neill is a lawyer and policy specialist at the largest nurses union
Ja, så
in the
Anna er der
country,
også.
with over 220,000 members. Indentured servitude. Does that
Fredrik?
go too far?
I don't think so.
Hva faen er
Because
Fredrik?
it's requiring people to work
Okay,
out
greit da.
a
Ok,
term based on debt.
These contracts are sometimes used by hospitals to staff the worst shifts and the sickest patients
Det går fint.
with the least
Det er ikke
experienced
noe,
nurses,
det er ikke noe å
according to
spørre om
some
det.
of the
Det er balle. Ha
1,700
det.
nurses O'Neill's union surveyed. In the past decade, these contracts have been used by a wide range of hospitals, including HCA, which says
Nei, han
its
kan ikke
training
gjøre det.
programs are
Vi har
more
bestemt oss for.
comprehensive and substantive than any standard job orientation. The other thing HCA and many other hospitals say is there just aren't enough nurses. We're in a nursing shortage.
There are plenty of licensed nurses, but there's a real lack of safe nursing jobs.
In Utah, Bree Fellows also signed an HCA contract. If she quit before 2 years, she'd have to pay back the $10,000 signing bonus they gave her, as well as up to $10,000 in training costs.
Where's the hedgehog?
Fellows, who had 2 kids under 2 at the time, accepted a job on the overnight shift in labor and delivery. But 6 months later, she was pregnant, exhausted, and begging, she says, to work the day shift.
She said, "You're brand new. No, you can't."
Were there some moments while you were doing this job that you just thought, I'm not safe? I'm not safe for these patients. I'm not safe for myself.
Yes. Just like not catching things that I should have, like just staring at the screen at 3 a.m. It's just very scary.
After 11 and a half months, she quit. The hospital sent letters demanding she return her upfront bonus of $10,000 as well as $6,000 to repay her training.
It was very much a slap in the face, like this has to be wrong.
Frightened, she and her husband took out a new credit card and paid the $14,000 the
Ja, då.
hospital agreed to take.
These contracts are
Ja,
bad for
tredje live,
nurses
hva er det
and
for noe?
they're bad for patients. With debt
Ja, hva
hanging
tenkte dere
over
på?
their
Fort.
head, a nurse has a much harder time speaking out.
Ok, er det noe med jobb å gjøre, eller?
Tells us that since we started reporting on these contracts 2 months ago, they've decided not to use them anymore. Though they
Ja,
declined
men
to
det
say
skal bare
whether
sende
they will
til,
enforce the
sende
contracts
til
nurses have
nærmere tid.
already signed or reimburse
Til
nurses
Boa.
like Bree
Jeg kan
Fellows.
sjekke det opp for deg.
Meanwhile,
Nu
the
får
federal
jag ta
government
det.
is getting involved. The Federal Trade Commission recently proposed a rule banning contracts like these, which are being used in an increasing number of industries, not just nursing.
So HCA is not the only company that's
They
doing this
certainly
kind of thing.
aren't, but HCA is the largest for-profit company in the country. They make over $5 billion last year. They've got 180 plus hospitals. They're an industry leader, so I think fair to focus on them and what their practices are.
And I mean, the nurses are already doing so much work, so this is so important, Cynthia.
It really is important, and as she said in the piece,
Yeah.
no shortage of nurses.
Well, thank you, Cynthia, and thanks for watching NBC News Daily.
This is what it looks and
From
feels
the storm
like.
zone.
Bigger piece to the puzzle.
Here's some of the stories we're watching tonight. Good evening. We begin tonight with breaking news just coming in.
We begin this hour with the latest developments. We're coming on the air with some shakeups big time on Capitol Hill.
How much water ultimately will be forced inland?
Whenever it happens, wherever you are, NBC News, streaming free now.
Bottom of the hour now. Here are some of the stories making headlines on NBC News Daily.
Palestinian militants fired hundreds of rockets from the Gaza Strip into Israel today. The barrage is a response to a series of Israeli airstrikes yesterday that killed 21 Palestinians, including 3 senior militants. Video shows Israel's Iron Dome defense system intercepting the Palestinian rockets before they hit. This is believed to be the heaviest fighting between both sides in months.
A Louisiana man has been arrested for shooting and wounding a 14-year-old girl. She was playing hide and seek on his property. Officials say the teen suffered a gunshot wound to the back of her head and was taken to a hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. According to the sheriff's office, David Van Doyle told detectives he saw shadows outside his home and began shooting after he saw people running away, and that he, quote, unknowingly hit the girl.
The CNBC anchor who accused former NBC Universal CEO Jeff Shell of sexual harassment and discrimination is leaving the company. Back in March, Hadley Gamble lodged a complaint against Shell. Shell left the company last month after an outside investigation into the allegations. Shell admitted to a, quote, inappropriate relationship, but says the complaint misrepresented the facts. A spokesperson for Gamble did not say why she was leaving. NBC News and CNBC are both units of NBC Universal, which is owned by Comcast.
And now we've got that stunning story out of Utah that's getting a lot of attention. A mother who wrote a children's book about the death of her husband is now being charged with his murder. Here's NBC News correspondent Erin McLaughlin.
So my husband passed away unexpectedly last year.
A month after promoting her children's book inspired by her husband's death, the widowed mother of 3 is now charged with his murder.
So you actually wrote this book with your children?
I did.
Police arrested Corey Richens on Monday outside of Park City, Utah, alleging the 33-year-old poisoned her husband Eric last March with a lethal dose of fentanyl.
He had 3 boys that he loved more than anything.
According to court documents, police were called to the couple's home at 3:22 in the morning and found Eric unresponsive on the floor at the foot of his bed. An autopsy later revealing he had 5 times the lethal dosage of illicit fentanyl in his system. Corey told responding officers she made Eric a Moscow Mule, which he drank in the bedroom earlier that night before she went to sleep in her child's room. While she claimed she didn't touch her phone until she called 911, investigators say they found phone records indicating she'd sent and received messages that night, which were later deleted. Her seemingly heartfelt sentiments expressed while promoting her book, now seen in a very different light.
And it's just comforting to them to know that, they're not living this life alone. Like, Dad is still here, it's just in a different way.
According to the charging documents, Corey purchased fentanyl from an acquaintance last February, which she says was for an investor asking for some of the Michael Jackson stuff. Days later, following the couple's Valentine's Day dinner, Eric became very ill and told a friend he thought his wife was trying to poison him. Prosecutors allege Corey then purchased even more fentanyl, and less than a month later, Eric was dead, and Corey, claiming to be grief-stricken, dedicated this book to her husband, calling him a wonderful father.
I took things that my kids have said to me this last year and we kind of articulated it and put it into a story.
Corey Richens is charged with 1 count of aggravated murder and 3 additional felony drug charges. She has yet to enter a plea and her attorney declined to comment at this time. Richens is expected in court next week. Back to you.
Erin, thank you. A Philadelphia prison is facing some serious questions right now after 2 inmates escaped. Listen to this. Police say the 2 men broke out Sunday night, but no one realized they were gone for nearly 19 hours. A massive manhunt underway for them now. NBC News reporter Maya Eaglin joins us now. Maya, what is the prison saying about this? How did 19 hours go by and nobody noticed?
Hey, Kate, that's the question on everyone's mind right now. Reports are showing that these 2 escaped from a hole in a fence during recreational time outside. Now, there's 2 different reasons we are hearing as to why this happened. According to our NBC Philadelphia station, The union that represents Philly's correctional officers said the 2 prisoners were able to escape due to staffing shortages. However, the Department of Prisons and the mayor's office said this statement was false and staffing problems did not play a role in this escape. All of this is shedding light on the limited resources inside Philadelphia jails. Here's some thoughts from Noah Barth, a member of the Pennsylvania Prison Society, which advocates for humane conditions for people incarcerated.
The escape is only the latest, most notable sign of the
Dekka meg, kjører siste trade nå. Hvis ikke det går oppover nå, så stopper jeg i dag. Så, da har jeg forsøkt, da gidder jeg ikke noe å gi meg, mens jeg har ikke tatt penger i dag da.
Now, this is all still under investigation, so we'll be monitoring the findings once it's completed. Kate?
And Maya, where does the search for these 2 men stand right now?
Kate, as of this afternoon, authorities are still searching for these 2 inmates. We know the U.S. Marshal Service and the Philadelphia Police Department are helping with the search. During a press conference earlier this week, police described these 2 inmates as dangerous and committed to holding them accountable for their escape. Kate?
Maya Eglin for us. Maya, thanks.
We mentioned earlier this hour that Title 42, the public health measure, is set to expire tomorrow. Right now, thousands of migrants from
Du skal alltid utsette det, det er sånn andre typen oppe. Utsetter alt hele tiden.
For jeg fikk betennelse, jeg er ikke min feil.
Hvorfor betennelse?
Jo, for det er vondt jeg gjør det. What exactly is Title 42, and will its expiration bring an end to the humanitarian crisis at the border? Well, join me as we take a closer look.
Nå henger pesten sammen igjen!
It's going to be chaotic. Just behind me.
Hundreds of migrants
Jeg får ikke faen, ass. Hæ? Ja.
border communities to the brink.
Our resources are stretched, and they're stretched quite thin.
At the center of it all, Title 42, the public health measure, was introduced in 2020 by the Trump administration.
Give Customs and Border Protection the tools it needs to prevent the transmission of the virus.
Before Title 42, migrants could seek asylum and
Dere må hjelpe meg med pesten. Altså, det går så treigt. Det var jo ikke sånn. Det er jo ikke sånn jeg slår av på PC-en.
Functionally, Title 42 has kind of created a bottleneck of people who are seeking asylum or otherwise kind of seeking entry to the United States.
Still, when Biden took office, the policy remained, though their stance has continually shifted.
The previous administration separated families and wasted tax dollars. We have been trying to undo that. We have been trying to make sure that we do it in a moral way.
Attempts to end Title 42 in 2022 were met with lawsuits from Republican attorneys general. Then, following a surge of migrants, Biden's administration announced an expansion of Title 42, providing some legal pathways for migrants, but also expediting migrant removal.
My administration is taking several steps to stiffen enforcement for those who try to come with
Ta gevinst.
a legal right to
Tok
stay.
gevinst.
In January, the United Nations saying the move
Tok gevinst.
undermines international human rights law. Now, in El Paso, Texas,
Shorta nå.
migrants have amassed in the area, waiting
Ja.
for Customs and Border Patrol to process their case. Nonprofit Opportunity Center for the
Ok.
Homeless, feeding nearly
Hun andre som bor hos har korona.
meals a day. Their normal
Og derfor gikk hun skal dit da, vet du, for hun har fått korona. Hun har ikke covid nå.
No matter how prepared we are, we simply aren't going to be prepared for the number of individuals there.
Hun har ikke vært der, da fikk hun skal dit.
The growing humanitarian crisis at the border is far from done.
Cinquely, thank you. President Biden is in New York City today, where he's pushing to raise the debt ceiling without the spending cuts that Republicans want. We are 3 weeks away from the June 1st deadline when the Treasury Secretary says that's when the U.S. could default on its debt for the first time ever if nothing is done.
Grassen er så treg, den PC-en.
Lawmakers seem not close to a deal at all. CNBC senior White House correspondent Kayla Tausche joins us now. Kayla, the president met with congressional leaders yesterday, another meeting set for Friday. Any progress at all?
Well, Kate, the fact that they're meeting at all is certainly progress over the state of play for the last several months. According to the president and some of the attendees at yesterday's meetings, congressional staff were set to convene with White House staff as early as last night following the meeting, and they're going to be convening on a daily basis until the principals get together again at the White House this Friday. The purpose of those meetings is to figure out whether there is any middle ground where the two sides can come together and figure out how, on one hand, to negotiate a spending deal that cuts certain programs or certain levels of spending that Republicans have been advocating for, while also raising the debt limit in the fashion that Democrats have been pushing for, allowing both political parties to save face. But Kate, based on the comments from both parties so far, following that meeting, the positions still appear entrenched with little wiggle room. Here's President Biden just a few moments ago in the Hudson Valley, New York.
They're doing the best, to the best of my knowledge, what no other political party has done in the nation's history. They're literally, not figuratively, holding the economy hostage by threatening to default on our nation's debt that we've already incurred over the last couple hundred years, unless we give in to their threats and demands as to what they think we should be doing with regard to the budget. This would be incredibly damaging.
Now, while President Biden was speaking, Republicans received some new ammunition for their arguments in the form of Treasury data on the government's financing for the month of April. According to the Treasury Department, the federal deficit ballooned by 3 times what it was this time last year because of higher interest rates and higher inflation, causing certain government programs like Social Security payments to be higher than they were before. So all of that is going to be fuel to the fire for Republicans who have argued, Kate, that spending is too high, it's only getting higher, the deficit is ballooning, and that needs to be kept in check, Kate.
Well, Kayla, you know, we've seen the debt ceiling raised plenty of times under both Democrat and Republican presidents. If America were to default, what happens?
Well, certainly there is data available that both sides are going to be
du har bil, ikke sant?
Democrats are fond of talking about the 3 times the
Ja, hvis du kommer til meg, så tar vi bilen, for min bil ikke EU-kjent.
While Republicans have been talking about the 7 out of the last 10 times the debt ceiling has been raised with certain budget reforms. But what everyone agrees on is that it would be catastrophic if a default were actually to happen. That would mean that the cost of borrowing for the government and for consumers would skyrocket. You'd see your interest rates go up even further. The stock market would tank, so the value of 401ks would go down. And then there would be questions about which, if any, federal programs would be able to be funded. And some of that funding could be delayed or halted. We're talking about Social Security payments, payments for military and veterans benefits, federal salaries. A lot of that comes due in the early part of June. And if the government doesn't know where it's going to be getting its money from, then it can't make those payments. And then there's the question of foreign countries who buy debt from the United States to help us fund operations here, whether they would
Ser du, nå piker det på det her, akkurat som vi snakket om.
of the United States would be called into question, but I think what everyone agrees on, Kate, is that that would be a bad scenario, and at least President Biden and the Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell have committed that under no circumstances would a debt default happen, but it's unclear how they get there in just 3 weeks' time.
Right. Okay. Kayla Tausche watching all of it for us. Thank you, Kayla. Well, coming up with the excitement and stress of graduation season upon us, what you can do to support the college kids in your life.
But first, Kate, we got to talk about today's daily snapshot, a precarious situation in this tiny village in Switzerland, and you can see it pretty clearly. Directly outside the community of Brienz is actually starting to break loose.
People have been ordered to evacuate by Friday night. Geologists have been closely watching for this possibility for years. Wow, that is threatening.
Ja, nå long igjen, da.
There's much more. NBC News Daily, right after this.
Jeg får ikke tatt gevinst der, for det går så tregt.
Thanks for tuning in. I'm Gotti Schwartz. Here are the stories we're following tonight. Storms keep coming here in California. The U.S. government just declassified this video. A lot more stories trending like crazy on social media. A controversy among lawmakers against young voters. What's the state of crypto today? What is going on when we're looking at trends there? Another mind-bending story on artificial intelligence. This is what my voice sounds like when I clone it. That wasn't me. You gotta see this. Stay tuned now. Weeknights at 8 Eastern.
Jeg må nesten gi meg, for det går alt for tregt for meg. Jeg klarer ikke... Når jeg snur meg, så har det går for sakte for meg nå. Det liksom henger hele tiden. Da er det klin umulig for meg å gjøre det.
Some breaking news this hour. An FDA panel has voted unanimously
Se, nå rører jeg på sånn.
the first ever over-the-counter birth control pill. A final decision by the FDA expected this summer. If it's approved, women would be able to obtain the pill without first having to visit a doctor to get a prescription. Some FDA scientists have raised concerns over the drug's label and whether women will understand how to properly take that pill.
Turning now to today's modern parenting, it's graduation season, which I know you know well.
I do. I have a graduate. It is exciting, but it's also stressful.
Tok gevinst på longen, gikk short. Jævla skummelt å gå short der.
To ease some of the anxiety.
It's a rite of passage, right? I mean, they're getting ready.
Det er close at alle idiotene skal kjøpe på close.
For 4 years, and you're thinking about what they've all managed living independently. So now as parents, we kind of have to put on that different hat and say, well, how are we needed? And how many times do we think as parents, are we really needed anymore?
Yeah.
Jeg får ikke tatt gevinst nå heller. Jeg får ikke tatt gevinst, for faen! Se, jeg bare henger.
Keep in contact.
This is so important.
Because you don't want to overdo it.
Absolutely. And you know, keeping in contact is so important because we think, well, we're texting them or we see them on social media, that's keeping in contact. No, this is actually a FaceTime call, a telephone call, maybe schedule something once a week to really check in and see how they're doing.
We've done that with my freshman in college right now. So what are mental health red flags, though? Like, when do you know that there may be something that you need to get some support for?
Well, I think, you know, trust your gut. And when you have those scheduled meetings, when you have a FaceTime call with them or you have a phone call, you have that intuition if something's off, if their speech is a little quicker or slower, if maybe their hygiene looks a little bit different. You know, those types of things are red flags. Also, things like, you know, if they're really saying, oh, I'm tired, or you sense something that is just a little off.
Nå tjener penger som at faen, det hjelper ikke det, hvis ikke kan få lukka posisjonen min.
Most college campuses now do have support, right? They have mental health facilities, they have counselors that are on demand.
Yeah. Absolutely.
For young people returning home from school after graduation, so whether they're graduating or they're just coming home for a summer break.
Right.
What's the parenting?
Det er masse penger.
What do I do?
Og han bruker sånn 10 sekunder på å close transasjonen
It's a real fine balance of supporting them and also kind of looking at how.
Ja, men jeg husker jo faen ikke passordet mitt på den jævla driten her.
Well, we have to have some structure, right? I mean, they're coming home and we also have adjusted to a new normal. So we have to kind of lay the ground rules and say, listen, if you're going to be home, here's some things that I think we should discuss. And opening the dialogue is so important. Having these conversations saying, you know, if you're going to be out overnight, you don't need to let me know where you're going and when you're going to be home, but just let me know I might not be home tonight. You know, maybe we can talk about contributing in some ways, come up with an agreement, laundry, cooking, gas in the car.
Some chores, maybe.
Yeah, some responsibility.
Reasonable.
Yes.
And you can't, I assume you can't treat them like you used to treat your kid. It's different now. They have been independent.
But you're still needed. Yeah. They still need you to say, you know what, you are valued and you are loved and you are enough as you are. They still need that.
Let's talk about new graduates. The job search can be one of the most daunting things on their mind. How can parents assist without assisting too much?
We are really their key influencers when you think about it. We really are. So we have to open the dialogue and say, you know what? Let's look at your skill set. Let's look at what you want to do and then kind of hone in on those things with them. We know them the best. So when they're looking for jobs and they've moved home for a bit, you know, have those conversations, schedule that time and sit down and say, you know, you're really good at this. You're really analytical. Or you're a great problem solver. You're a great creative writer. And that can kind of hone in on where they want to go with their trajectory. And it's difficult. Getting a job is a job. It's a full-time job for these kids. The job market is competitive. It's changed drastically since COVID. So, you know, you need to be a guide and support, but you also don't have to take the lead ropes. Give them the lead ropes. They're driving this charge.
Oh, so much there. Amy Schmidt, thank you so much for being with us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So important. I'm going to send that to my parents.
It's happening in my house right now. You're watching NBC News.
Nå er jeg short. Jeg var long i stad. Nå er jeg short. Husk på at det siste time på børsen stort sett går bare oppover. Nesten alltid. Du har bullrun siste timen. Så gå short her nå, det er egentlig bare teit. Det er bare jeg som er så sta faen. Er det mulig? Jeg får ikke trada. Faen, går så dreigt, ass. Makan, boys. Dette her irriterer dritten ut av meg. Dette går dreigt, ass.
What is going to happen now? Going back and forth, oh yeah, this is it, right?
NBC News, streaming free now.
Fy faen. Jeg tror jeg må logge av PC-en igjen. Det er 50 ganger jeg gjør det her, ass.
In America is getting a new identity. Yeah, you've probably heard of Fort Hood, Texas. Well, it was initially named after a Confederate general, John Bell Hood, but this week the base's name was changed to honor a Mexican-American Army leader, a four-star general named Richard Edward Cavazos. He served in Korea and Vietnam and died in 2017.
What we do in this naming redesignation process is look for soldiers who reflect our values, who recognize and exemplify what we want to define the Army to look like.
The change is part of an ongoing campaign to rename 9 U.S. Army installations that originally commemorated Confederate leaders. And NASA has always been at the forefront of space exploration, but when it comes to climate change, they're focused right here on Earth.
Yeah, a team of scientists working off the coast of California to learn
Så
more about our oceans.
nå,
Here's NBC News
så går
correspondent
det,
Jacob Sovoroff.
så går det så lang tid.
Our journey begins at NASA's Ames Research Center
Se
in
så lang tid det
Silicon Valley. Here, scientists are on a mission to study the ocean's surface like...
Jeg er short igjen nå.
And to do that, they'll need to take one of these.
What's up, everybody? What should I expect?
We're going to fly about 20 north-south lines over the Pacific. Should be real enjoyable. In order for your safety, we want to have you in a NASA flight suit.
Men jeg får ikke skalpa når det går så jævla treigt. Så det er sykt, så jeg blir så jævla irritert. Jeg kan ta gevinst 100 ganger nå. Jeg får faen ikke gjort det en gang igjen.
Don't worry, I didn't understand it either. Deploys a fleet of aircraft, ships, and marine robotics to observe how eddies, whirlpools, and currents interact with the atmosphere and will ultimately shape the Earth's climate. NASA's deemed this work critical because while the surface makes up only 2% of the ocean, it's where nutrients, gases, and heat all converge.
Jeg er sikker på å restarte en dritt med oss der. Faen.
Is NASA's lead scientist on today's mission.
Check this out. What Holly's looking at right now is what? It's the little portal that you're going to do experiments through?
Yes, it's the window to our instruments. So that's what we'll be looking down at the ocean.
You basically got to make sure that it's clean.
Squeaky clean.
And after a series of final checks, we're cleared for
Jeg
takeoff.
kan ikke bytte til TradingView, for det er ikke fuckings chartet. Det er selve transaksjonene mine. Jeg får ikke lukka posisjonene mine. Jeg får ikke solgt eller kjøpt. Jeg gir faen i den kursen her. Jeg får ikke tatt gevinst. Jeg kan ikke bytte til Chrome, for jeg husker faen ikke passordet, for jeg er så tjukk i huet mitt. At jeg lager han på PC-en. Helvete. Jeg er helt anal. Du må skjønne at jeg er helt idiot på PC. Jeg er den mest idioten du kommer over på PC. Det er ingen som er så tjukk i huet som er på PC. Ingen. Glem det. Finns ikke.
A few minutes later, we found exactly what we were looking for. Crystal clear conditions.
With our instrument, we get this really, really high resolution color image of the ocean.
And so would that be considered part of the weather of
Er ikke så vanskelig å jobbe med folk som er... Det er ingen som er så tjukk i huet som er på PC. Det nekter jeg å tro. Det finnes ikke.
put the finishing touches on
Jeg er
the
garantert den som er tjukkest du har alle møtt når det gjelder PC. Det er ingen som er så tjukk i huet som meg.
Back down on the ground and analyze all the data that was collected. That's when you're going to be able to see.
Yeah, we can
crystal
see,
clear.
we can see, you know, amounts of chlorophyll or phytoplankton. So at this point, we'll stop recording, and that'll do it for today. We've stopped recording on our final line, so you are clear to maneuver.
Copy, and confirm it's just RTB from here.
RTB, copy.
Okay, coming right.
Return to base, right? Am I right?
That's it.
Yes.
You're hired.
NASA's only been flying this particular S-mode mission since 2019. It's already generated useful data, though. Over time, it's going to help inform scientists
Nå er han ikke
about the
treg
role
igjen.
the ocean's surface plays in our climate. Back to you.
All right, Jacob, thanks. All right, everybody loves chocolate and cheese, right?
Well, maybe answer that question after you hear this story.
Nå
Okay,
funka han.
confectioner Comparte has joined forces with Heinz
Nå er jeg
Kraft's
minus, for han
Velveeta
driver
to
og
make
kuker av
truff
den driten
bells.
her.
They're made to look like Velveeta's signature pasta shells. Truff bells, though, are a limited time chocolate and cheese. Ooh, truffle?
Oh, they have an outer coating of white chocolate infused with Velveeta cheese. And the price for 5 of these? $25. I'm not
Kate?
so sure.
What do you think?
I love cheese and I love chocolate.
All right.
I don't think I'm gonna love that.
Glad I can't eat cheese today. Well, thanks for watching NBC News Daily.
I'm Kate Snow.
I'm Zing Clay. We'll be right back.
Sånn er vi i gang. Da kan vi gå short og long om hverandre. 100 ganger. Det er litt lettere for meg å tjene penger av den der pisset her som må henge seg til.
This is what it looks and feels
What's the latest, Phil? A bigger piece to the puzzle.
Here's some of the stories we're watching tonight.
How much water ultimately will be forced inland?
Whenever it happens, wherever you are, NBC News, streaming free now.
What is going to happen now?
Going back and forth quickly.
Oh, yeah, this is it.
NBC News, streaming free now.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kate Snow.
And I'm Zing Clay. NBC News Daily starts right now.
Nå er short igjen. Jeg kommer til å gå ut igjen sånn hele tiden, for nå kan jeg faktisk røre på og bevege musen. Så da kan du gå alle veier her, boys.
To the COVID-era policy called Title 42. What's being done to ease the pressure?
Victory tour. E. Jean Carroll speaking out after her civil victory over former President Donald Trump. Why this ruling could open the former president up to other civil cases.
Price drop. New numbers showing inflation in America is easing up. The impact on your wallet and what this says about the economy.
And counter offer. An FDA panel votes to allow a birth control pill to be sold over the counter. How soon could you see it on the shelves?
Welcome, everyone. We start with the crisis on the U.S. border. Tomorrow, the COVID-era policy called Title 42 will officially expire.
Yeah, and as a result, immigration officials are expecting an influx of migrants at the border. More than 500 troops have been sent to the region. Here's President Biden on what to expect in the coming weeks.
It's going to be chaotic for a while.
Republicans are criticizing the decision to end Title 42, and tomorrow the House will vote on a GOP-backed border security bill. NBC News senior national correspondent Tom Llamas is with us in Juarez, Mexico, and NBC News correspondent Guad Venegas is near the border in San Diego. So we've got the whole border covered here. Tom, let me start with you. We just heard the president saying this is going to be chaotic. What are you hearing there on the ground from people on the Mexico side of the border? What's being done to limit the anticipated chaos?
Right, Kate. So, yeah, there is a lot of confusion on this side. When you speak to migrants, they understand that the laws, the policies are going to change after Thursday night, but they're not exactly sure why. And because of that, there is this rush, there is this crush at the border, places like Juarez, where we are right now. Just beyond that barbed wire fence, that is El Paso, and you can see all of the migrants, many families that are waiting to hopefully be processed. The problem is that this is not the rule of law here, because you're supposed to go to a port of entry. This is an access point, a door just on the border wall. But somehow migrants heard that they were letting people in here. And to be completely honest, someone has cut a portion of the barbed wire fence off. So it is very easy to cross the Rio Grande and walk right up into El Paso. Of course, you have the border wall on the other side, but it's allowing people to come in through here. And I think because of that, it's clear that CBP and other enforcement officials want to make sure that they're not wasting resources. They want to be helping people getting caught up on barbed wire, because so many people need to be processed right now. But again, a lot of the migrants right now think things are going to change after Thursday night, and that's why they're all showing up here and hoping somehow they can get into the U.S. and claim asylum.
Tom, thanks. And I mean, Guad, I want to bring you in because I know you're here in the United States, San Diego, and Congress has really been unable to come to any sort of agreement on immigration reform for years. This crisis is not new, but there is new legislation, the Secure the Border Act of 2023, and it's making its way through Congress. Do you think it stands a chance?
St. Clay, the White House already said if this were approved, President Biden would veto that legislation. There's various reasons why Democrats oppose it. They say it doesn't address the root causes of immigration. They also say that that would also undo what they've done with the application they created, the CV1P app that allows migrants to request asylum the legal way. These are the migrants that go to the port of entry that are able to get an appointment, not the migrants that are coming here. So for several reasons, Democrats have said they do oppose that legislation. Let's hear for both a Republican and a Democrat when it comes to this legislation.
House Republicans are committed to solving this issue with the Secure the Border Act, which will finish the wall, advance border technology, and support our brave Border Patrol agents. And it will deliver on a key pillar of our commitment to America, a nation that is safe.
Well, they want to waste billions and billions of taxpayer dollars on a medieval border wall, a 14th century solution that will not work to a 21st century challenge.
And of course, we're in San Diego, one of the cities that has the most infrastructure when it comes to a border wall. There's 2 border walls here. A lot of the migrants have been able to go over that first border wall different ways. Some of them tell me they pay someone to use a ladder. Others use a hole that exists here. But the point is, the migrants are not coming in, at least the ones arriving now. They're not coming in to try to enter the country legally. They come to turn themselves in to immigration. So right now, I think the most important thing is to think of the humanitarian crisis that this is creating, St. Clay.
All right, Guad Venegas there, Tom Llamas, thank you both. And by the way, you do not want to miss Top Story with Tom Llamas tonight. It's live from the border, the whole show streaming live at 7 p.m. Eastern. That's on NBC News Now.
Turning now to New York, Congressman George Santos, whose short career in politics has been plagued with controversy, is now facing a 13-count federal indictment.
Det sitter med en annen greie, for det som på det closest av de ikke kan close, hans og
He's pleaded not guilty to the charges. House
Jeg tror
Republican
ikke jeg
leadership urged
kan bruke
patience
det
as the
som
legal
seriøst.
process plays out.
For det kan ikke, jeg kan ikke holde sånn. Jeg blir så irritert at det går ut over alt.
In America, there's a presumption of innocence.
Men kan man bruke samme skjermen da?
He's going to have to go through the legal process.
Det kan
We're
ikke
going to
dere?
continue to work to root out fraud, and there's lots of it.
NBC News correspondent Valerie Castro is outside the courthouse in central Islip, New York. Valerie, thank you for joining us.
Hvorfor funker det nå, og så funket det ikke i stad? Hvorfor går det av og på? Det er det ikke jeg skjønner. Nå er det ting. Nå går det fint ut igjen, nå kan jeg trene som faen. Og nå lukter det seg med en gang. Hvorfor skjedde ikke det i stad?
See lawmaker George Santos making his way. I imagine Valerie's trying to capture some of that sound right now. He did just plead not guilty. What are you hearing, Valerie?
Zinkley, as you see by those live pictures, there's a lot of commotion right now. People are trying to get George Santos to come over to the podium where there are several microphones set up to see if he will speak following this court appearance. Again, he pleaded not guilty to all 13 counts. I want to break down those counts for you. 7 counts of wire fraud, 3 counts of money laundering, 1 count of theft of public funds, and 2 counts of false statements to the House. If he is convicted on the most serious of these charges, that sentence could be as many as 20 years behind bars. Prosecutors accuse him of defrauding political donors by soliciting campaign funds and using some of those funds to pay off personal debts like credit cards and even buying designer clothes. Again, you're looking at live pictures right now of George Santos. Let's see if we can listen in.
It's a witch hunt because it makes no sense that in 4 months, 5 months, I'm indicted. You
Hva faen kan noe til Edge da? Helvete, eller? Funket jo tidligere i dag.
Deposits from 9
Var Edgen forkjøla, eller? Du har byttet Chrome til bytte botox.
It's been years of exposing. A lot of you here have reported on them, and yet no investigation is launched into them. I'm gonna fight. I'm getting back to that. I'm gonna fight my battle. I'm gonna deliver. I'm gonna fight the witch hunt. I'm gonna take care of clearing my name, and I look forward to doing that. Yeah, hold on. I would like the opportunity for some of you guys to ask some questions in an orderly fashion. We'll start right here.
Why would you apply for unemployment benefits when you had a job making $120,000 a year?
Rachel, this is part of my defense. This is inaccurate information.
Are we going to go back to Valerie? I imagine she's trying to get this.
Synes du en chart så bedre, liksom?
Just heard from George Santos following his arraignment, again adamant that he looks forward to clearing his name after pleading not guilty to those 13 charges. In court, we're told he was released on a $500,000 bond. His attorney telling NBC News that there are 3 individuals that secured that bond that wish to remain anonymous for fear of retaliation. Santos was ordered to turn over his passport. His travel will be limited between New York and Washington, D.C., and his next court appearance is scheduled for June. Zinkley?
And Valerie, of course, that press conference is happening right behind you. You referenced it, right? He said he's going to fight this battle, even calling it a witch hunt, similar to former President Donald Trump's sentiments. What have we heard from GOP leadership? And also, what are we hearing from the rest of New York's congressional delegation?
So Zinkley, lawmakers on both sides of the aisle have called for his resignation. Some say he should have resigned even before he was sworn in. I believe we have some reaction from those lawmakers. Take a listen.
And Valerie, presently we don't have that sound, but thank you so much for your reporting on this. Of course, we'll stay on it, and thank you. Valerie Castro.
For the 10th month in a row,
inflation
is trending downward. Look at this chart, and the red bar that we're going to show you, it'll be all the way on the right of your screen. A new report from the Bureau of Labor Statistics says the inflation rate was 4.9% higher in April compared to the same time last year. That's a lower number than expected, and as you can see from this chart, a massive improvement from the peak of inflation back last June. NBC News correspondent Tom Costello is crunching the numbers for us. Tom, this sounds like some good news. Break things down, though. Where are we seeing prices drop, and where are things still stubbornly high?
So 4.9% is the inflation rate year over year. Keep in mind, the Fed is hoping that we can hit a target of a 2% inflation rate. So we have a long way to go to get there. But as you mentioned, 9% was where we were last June. So
Jeg kan nesten notere at nesten alle forvaltere kommer til å sitte og shorte ut hele uka. Inflasjonstall på som så høye, det ikke i nærheten. Det ikke i nærheten. Og så driver folk og kjøper da, for man så tjukk i huet at det bare idioti. Det begynner å vente ut. Det fortsatt helt katastrofe. Jævla idioter.
To the inflation picture, if you will. And we've also seen, by the way, I would just tell you that kind of a stubborn situation with gas, because while it was showing some improvement, down 12% into April, and then we've now seen it tick back up again.
Thinking about the summer travel, I think of you, Tom. Yeah. I'm thinking of all those airline flight prices that are through the roof, too. Big picture, Americans, though, are still going on vacation, right? They're still spending money, even though the cost of goods remains so high. Do we know what to expect this summer and whether that's going to persist?
We have one prediction. This is out of Expedia. They're talking about searches for travel this summer, and that would suggest that people are, in fact, going to be traveling. We have summer getaway searches up 25% over last year, and 64% of Americans.
Ja, det bør ramle I morgen, Horny. For det her så dumt.
Last year. And then Mother's Day is approaching. Here's an interesting number. National Retail Federation saying that $35.7 billion will be spent on Mother's Day. $4 billion more than last year, $274 per person. The most ever. We're spending on mom this year.
Wait, did you just say $274 per person for your mom?
Yeah, it's going to be an expensive brunch, and then you got to break out the flowers, and you got to buy the perfume.
Sånn. Når jeg sitter på treden, lang. Hvis ikke det går nå, så stopper jeg. Det ferdig, da gidder jeg. Men helvete. Jeg hang den så på faen igjen.
Coming up, what is at stake in the high-profile trial involving Prince Harry and a popular British newspaper?
Plus, E. Jean Carroll's message to former President Trump after a civil jury found he sexually assaulted her and lied about it.
Det lang. På nytt. 100 øyer. Jeg går ikke 0. Jeg gir ikke hva det går med. Det er galt sånn. Nå går det bort seg. Jeg kan ikke fatte at folk kjøper det. Jeg skjønner ikke. Folk må være virkelig flotte i huet. Jeg kan ta gevinst nå, men Hvis det faller, så faller det mye her nå. Det kommer ikke til å falle så mye, for det er close, men jeg skjønner ikke at den har gått opp dit.
A jury found that the former president was liable for sexually abusing Ms. Carroll and defaming her. The jury awarded her $5 million in damages in total. Carroll and her lawyer spoke out this morning on Today.
Overwhelmed with joy and happiness and delight for the women in this country. Before yesterday, there was a concept of the perfect victim.
Det stopplås,
Perfect victim
nå er jeg sjokk.
always screams, always reports to the police, always makes note when it happened. And then her life is supposed, the perfect victim's life is supposed to fold up. And she's never sort of supposed to be happy again. And yesterday we demolished that old concept. It is gone. It is gone.
Let's bring in NBC News legal analyst Danny Savallo. So, Danny, let's dig in here because I know the civil jury, 6 men, 3 women, they found former President Trump liable for sexually abusing and defaming Ms. Carroll. However, they did not find him liable for the alleged rape. How do you read into that distinction, especially given that this is the first time he's been found civilly liable for a case like this, even though he's faced a lot of similar allegations?
What I think happened on the rape charge, if you look at the jury verdict form, it lists the rape option first and then the sexual abuse option second. What I expect may have happened since rape requires additional force, physical force and intercourse, and sexual abuse really just requires the sexual contact without consent. I expect that in the jury room there was probably some disagreement, and maybe as a compromise they couldn't get to unanimity on the rape. Well, there may have been 1 or 2 votes, maybe even 4 votes, but once they decided, well, we can agree that at minimum there was some form of sexual abuse. That we can be unanimous on, and I think that was, and it was the jury verdict form left that open as a possibility, as a kind of, even though this is not criminal, a lesser included offense.
President Trump decided not to testify. His team has said that they will appeal. What happens with that? I mean, what kind of argument can they make to try to get rid of this verdict?
I think there are a few appealable issues here, and they all relate in some form or another to prior bad acts. In other words, should the Access Hollywood tape have come in? Because you can't typically introduce everything bad that somebody did in their life to prove that they did something bad on this particular occasion. So should the Access Hollywood tape have come in? Should other witnesses have been allowed who testified that Trump did the same thing to them on prior occasions? Those will be hot issues on appeal, and they may bear a look by the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, which will hear any direct appeal out of this case.
It reminds me of the Bill Cosby case where there were women who testified about his past, and then that became an issue in appeal.
You are exactly right. That is the modern trend, is that prosecutors and plaintiffs, you use this evidence at your own risk. It might get you the win, but it makes that win susceptible to appeal.
Said as a defense attorney.
Yes, exactly right.
I mean, Danny, as a defense attorney,
Aner ikke på OTSP. Amerikansk OTSP aner ikke.
all eyes were on this.
When this case was just a he said, she said, it was even odds in my opinion. And look, even Carol's own attorney admitted in her closing that Carol had some, and I quote, weird and unusual behavior that had to be explained away. But the case only got better when Donald Trump opened his mouth at deposition, where, for example, in answer to the question, were those your words on the Access Hollywood tape? Folks, what is the safest way to answer that question? Yes. He didn't do that. It's in the tape. He doesn't say yes. Instead, he adds, yeah, well, I think that's true. Nobody even asked him whether or not he needed to defend those words or to double down on them. He did it gratuitously, and it only harmed his case.
Well, we'll definitely be following this as the appeals come through. Danny Savalas, thank you so much. And coming up, the multi-million-dollar settlement in the case involving a California man that died in police custody. We'll have that and a lot more. You're watching NBC News Daily.
Kanskje skal ta gevinst. Du kan bryte mye mer opp, vet du. Faen opp til veggen. Det er galskap. At folk kjøper her oppe er helt sinnssykt. Ja, whatever.
What is going to happen now?
Going back and forth because
Go ahead. This is it, right?
Hvordan kjører jeg sånn trailing... Hvordan tar jeg og kjører sånn trailing stopplås på den der dritten her?
NBC News, streaming free now.
Er det noen som vet hvordan å kjøre trailing stopplås?
In today's Consumer Confidential, changes are coming to the way your favorite retailers process returns. While returns are easy for us, they can be costly for big-name stores and brands, leading many of them to crack down on their policies. NBC News correspondent and anchor Vicki Nguyen joins me now to talk about this. So, Vicki, what are some good rules to keep in mind when you're going to return an item?
Zinkley, I'm trying to make this a thing. Help me. PBP, pause before purchasing. Because back in the olden days, retailers wanted to make it super easy for us to buy and return things online. They wanted us to get on board with internet shopping. Well, fast forward 15, 20 years, and now 60% of retailers recently surveyed said, we got to crack down on our return.
Du, hvordan kjører sånn trailing stopplås?
16.5% of everything that's purchased online gets returned.
Trailing stopplås, sånn at jeg kan bare ha...
So first things first, don't buy with the intention of returning. If you do have to return something, make sure it's in great resellable condition. That means take off your makeup, no perfume, when you're trying things on. If you've got shoes, don't walk around outside till you know you want them. Keep the tags on, the original packaging. If you go back to do an in-store return, keep your ID and your original
training,
It's not always necessary, but it can expedite things for you.
And that can also impact waste, right? Returns?
Absolutely. Even if you get the money back for your item, if the store thinks, you know what, we can't sell this, that's going straight to a landfill, and that is literally hundreds of tons of things that don't have a second life. So think about the carbon footprint of that alone.
And then, I mean, we got to talk about our favorite brands. What are some policies we should be looking out for?
Okay, let's talk about some of the big retailers. We'll start with Target. Target gives you 90 days to return things, whether that's in store or by mail. Almost everything except electronics, you only have 30 days. Now, here's the hack. If you are a Target Red card holder, you have up to 120 days to return your items. Amazon, this is a big one. So Amazon has always been 30-day return policy, but you want to read the fine print because sometimes you're buying a completely different policy in a shorter time window. The other thing Amazon is doing is instituting a $1 fee on some items. So let's say you take it to a UPS, right? A Kohl's or a Whole Foods that was closer to return that Amazon item, you could be charged $1. This is a good time to check all of your favorite retailers and make sure you know what the return policies are, because what they were a year ago may not be the case now.
I mean, big changes, and sometimes returning it's more expensive than buying the item.
Exactly, in which case you should donate it.
All right, Vicki Nguyen with all the information you need. Thank you so much.
Well, with summer just around the corner, you might be trying to come up with some ways to keep your kids busy, or the kids you know, and that can get really expensive. NBC's Stephanie Rule has some tips.
With summer upon us, I know we all want to maximize our fun, but something we need to do to be financially fit is budget. So let's start with the smallest of budgets. What can we do for free? We'll start with a staycation. Check your local listings in your library. What can you do in your town or city for free? There might be free theater or concerts or fireworks. Check out local lakes or beaches. You could potentially do that for a very low or no cost. I know lots of people want to go to summer camp, but you can also recreate that for your kids at home. One day it might be bracelet making. Another day it could be or bring all the pillows and blankets in the house and do a big slumber party. If you are planning to travel, there are ways to set a budget as well. Driving should be cheaper than flying. Some families are starting to do what's known as a home share, multiple families in one space to split the cost. If you do plan to fly, make sure you're checking the Points Guy or Hopper, and at least Google Flights so you know your price comparing. You don't want to max out what you're spending on flights. And something that's really important, food. You don't need to be going out for 3 meals a day. If you're in a hotel, fridge. You can put yogurts in there. You can put smoothies in there. If your kids are good with cereal bars at home, they'll be even better with them on vacation. Lastly, how are you going to pay? If you're good about using your credit card, meaning you're paying in full at the end of the month, it makes sense to use a card because you can accrue points over time.
Jeg er long her. Jeg har en ordensnigger inne som er long. Der er masse gevinst.
Sometimes they're 3%. So you might want to switch to a credit card where you don't have to pay them. But my favorite way to
jeg bare trykker på menn, så kommer det opp som bare.
With an envelope budget. At the beginning of the season, put money in separate envelopes for different budgets.
Jeg har gjort en transaksjon som har inneholdt masse penger. Det vil jeg bare holde.
It could be for barbecues. Another one could be for souvenirs. And when that envelope is empty, then you are done spending. And at the end of that fun summer, you've maximized your fun and you haven't gone over budget.
Stephanie, thank you. Coming up, Beyonce fans getting information to be part of her first tour in 5 years. You're watching NBC News Daily.
Jeg skjønner han følger liksom kursen, og det er det jeg vil. Men nå kommer det på buy, jeg skal ikke kjøpe ekstra. Jeg skjønner ikke en dritt, ja. Nei, jeg bare gir faen. Bare se på det. Greit da. Ok, bra. Det er mulig, jeg vil ikke ta gevinst nå, liksom. Gevinst. Pengegevinst da. Ikke bra nok. Men
With breaking news just coming in whenever it happens, wherever you are.
Nå er jeg short, boys. Jeg var long, tok gevinst, det er short.
NBC News, streaming free now.
Bottom of the hour now, here are some of the stories making headlines on NBC News Daily.
Palestinian militants fired hundreds of rockets from the Gaza Strip into Israel today. The barrage is in response to a series of Israeli airstrikes yesterday that killed 21 Palestinians, including 3 senior militants. Video shows Israel's Iron Dome defense system intercepting the rockets before they hit. This is understood to be the heaviest fighting between both sides in months.
Vice President Kamala Harris is making history. The White House says she will give the commencement address at West Point Military Academy. This makes her the first woman ever to serve as commencement speaker in the school's 221-year history.
And NASA has always been at the forefront of space exploration. But when it comes to climate change, the agency is now focusing right here on Earth. Scientists at NASA are on a new mission to study the surface of the oceans. The goal of the research is to understand how eddies, whirlpools, and currents interact with the atmosphere and shape the Earth's climate.
The state of California will pay $24 million to the family of a man who died in police custody. 3 years ago, highway patrol officers pinned Edward Bronstein to the ground while he screamed, "I can't breathe." The settlement comes 6 weeks after several California highway patrol officers and a nurse were charged in Bronstein's death. NBC News reporter Gary Grumbach is following this story for us. Gary, are Bronstein's relatives or the state saying anything about this settlement?
Hey there, Kate. Yeah, so to catch everyone up here, the family of Edward Bronstein filed this lawsuit alleging excessive force and a violation of civil rights after this whole incident was caught on tape. Bronstein's family says Edward was terrified of needles, and when a California highway patrol tried to take a blood sample, he was initially reluctant to comply. That led to several officers holding him face down, instructing him to stop yelling. Bronstein yelled, "I can't breathe," and lost consciousness soon thereafter. Bronstein's attorney is hopeful this verdict sends a strong message not just in Burbank, but around the state.
We finally have some justice. We finally have accountability. And this settlement, why the $24 million is so important, is because it sends a message to every police officer in California that when they put their badge on, they take an oath to protect life.
So Bronstein's death has actually prompted the California Highway Patrol to change its policies, preventing officers from using techniques that involve what they call substantial risk of positional asphyxia. And in 2021, Gavin Newsom signed a law barring police in the state from using certain face-down holds. This is officially the largest civil rights settlement of its kind by the state of California. Kate?
And Gary, meantime, the case against these 7 officers and the nurse connected to Bronstein's death, that continues, right?
Yeah, so there's 2 overlapping cases here. That civil trial, which just wrapped up, and then this criminal trial. The 6 officers involved in the incident face 1 count each of involuntary manslaughter and 1 felony count of assault under the color of authority. The registered nurse that was on the scene was also charged with involuntary manslaughter, and if convicted, they could get up to 4 years in prison. Kate?
All right, Gary Grumbach for us. Gary, thank you.
Now to a stunning story out of Utah that's getting a lot of attention. A mother who wrote a children's book about the death of her husband is now being charged with his murder. Here's NBC News correspondent Erin McLaughlin.
So my husband passed away unexpectedly last year.
A month after promoting her children's book inspired by her husband's death,
Då har vi pengar
the
igen.
mother of 3 is now charged with his murder.
So you actually wrote this book with your children? I did.
Hvor er det taget
Police
gevinster?
arrested Corey
Ja,
Richards on
jävla
Monday
högt.
outside of Park City,
Folk är
Utah,
gärna.
alleging the 33-year-old poisoned her husband Eric last March with a lethal dose of fentanyl.
He had 3 boys that he loved more than anything.
According to court documents, police were called to the couple's home at 3:22 in the morning.
Fy fan,
Found
vad
Eric unresponsive on the floor at the foot of his bed. An autopsy later revealing he had 5 times the lethal dosage of illicit fentanyl in his system. Corey told responding officers she made Eric a Moscow Mule, which he drank in the bedroom earlier that night before she went to sleep in her child's room. While she claimed she didn't touch her phone until she called 911, investigators say they found phone records indicating she'd sent and received messages that night, which were later deleted. Her seemingly heartfelt sentiments expressed while promoting her book, now seen in a very different light.
It's just comforting to them to know that, you know, they're not living this life alone. Like, Dad is still here, it's just in a different way.
According to the charging documents, Corey purchased fentanyl from an acquaintance last February, which she says was for an investor asking for some of the Michael Jackson stuff. Days later, following the couple's Valentine's Day dinner, Eric became very ill and told a friend he thought his wife was trying to poison him. Prosecutors allege Corey then purchased even more fentanyl, and less than a month later, Eric was dead, and Corey, claiming to be grief-stricken, dedicated this book to her husband, calling him a wonderful father.
I took things that my kids have said to me this last year and we kind of articulated it and put it into a story.
Corey Richens is charged with 1 count of aggravated murder and 3 additional felony drug charges. She has yet to enter a plea, and her attorney declined to comment at this time.
Jo, egentlig ikke det,
Richens
boys.
is expected in
Egentlig så har
court
ikke handlet på
next
kloks i
week.
det hele
Back
tatt.
to you.
Aaron, thank you. A courtroom battle in London is pitting Prince Harry against a British tabloid. The Daily Mirror is accused in a phone hacking scandal targeting Harry and several other British celebrities. The publisher has acknowledged and apologized for illegally gathering information about the prince. Joining us now is NBC News correspondent Ali Arouzi. He's in London for us. Ali, walk us through this lawsuit and where we're at. What specifically is the tabloid accused of doing?
Hey, Kate. Well, the tabloid is being accused of unlawfully gathering information and then publishing this in articles between...
Er det noen analyse, eller sitter du og venter på bevegelse og kaster terning om du langer det? Ja, det er null kontroll.
Well-known figures in this country that have brought this case against the Mirror Group, including the state of the late pop star George Michael. Now, Prince Harry's lawyers are saying that all this information was obtained illegally, most of it through phone hacking between 1996 and 2011 that was published in some 133 articles, and they're saying all the information in that article is illegal because the methods with which they gathered it was all unlawful. But what's really at the heart of this case, Kate, is whether Mirror Group executives knew about this widespread hacking that was going on. Now, Prince Harry's lawyer is saying that they knew about it, and not only did they fail to do anything about it, they authorized all of this going on. So a lot of questions for them to answer, but these executives are all denying that they authorized this widespread hacking.
And Harry has sometimes gotten involved in cases like this. Do we expect that he might testify, Prince Harry?
What we're learning from his legal team is that we're expecting him to show up here in June and give evidence. And if he does show up and give evidence, he will be the first royal to give evidence in court since the 19th century. And he really has made it a raison d'etre to go after the British tabloid media. He says his life's mission is to change the British media landscape.
Yeah, he's talked about that in his memoir. I mentioned the publisher of the Daily Mirror has apologized. What else are they saying, Art?
Ja, burde
That's
klima
right.
nå.
I mean, straight out of the gate,
På close kan det skje alt mulig
apologized.
rart.
They said that they had illegally gathered information on one instance. It's very important to mention that. They're just saying there was one instance that they'd gathered information, and they're saying that Harry's claims warrant some sort of compensation. What that compensation will be, we'll find out at the end of the trial. Kate?
Ali Arouzi for us in London. Ali, thank you.
And there's another high-stakes Hollywood fight that could keep those reruns on your TV for quite some time. The Directors Guild of America is now starting to negotiate with studios and streaming companies. At the same time, the Writers Guild remains on strike, grinding production on many hit shows to a halt. NBC News correspondent Marissa Parra joins us now from Los Angeles to talk about this. So, Marissa, first, let's just start with the deal or no deal situation we're in, because if a deal is not reached between the DGA and the studios, what exactly does that mean for everyone watching? For people who are just trying to watch their favorite shows?
Yeah, so that's a great question. First things first, they're starting their negotiations now. Their contract expires on June 30th, so there is some time for them to work things out with the studios. But Zinkley, one thing I want to point out here, some people at home might be thinking, well, I haven't really seen the impacts of the strike quite yet outside of late night TV. But that's because you have streaming platforms like Netflix that are saying they have things in the pipeline. They have enough content in the pipeline, but ultimately what we're going to see is, depending on how long this strike lasts, and especially if you see directors joining on the picket line and going fully on strike, and then you have SAG-AFTRA, which includes actors, and if they join the picket line, Zinkley, forget about it. At some point, we're going to see that pipeline of content dry up, and you will see an impact, but that all depends on how things go over the next few weeks.
Yeah, that's really important. Just because you don't feel it now doesn't mean it won't come later. I also want to talk about the demands here. What exactly is the directors union asking for?
Yeah, so in addition to the things you would expect, of course, they're bringing up things like pensions and whatnot, but really this strike with the writers has been called the streaming strike, and that's something that's really felt across the board, across directors, across actors. These are things that they've all been complaining about. Streaming has changed not only the way that we watch TV and movies, but the way that it's made and the way that they get paid. So that is a big sticking point for them, and so that is going to be interesting because I think that in terms of how this negotiation process it may go on longer than it has historically because there's a lot on the line, Zane Clay.
And of course, there is no content without it being written. So has there been any progress towards ending the writer's strike?
Well, the short answer is no. We know that this is kind of how this was going to go. The studios have really dug in their heels. And when I was speaking to people who are part of the negotiating committee for the Writers Guild, they said that they really didn't expect any movement until after
Ja, det går bra. Bare sliten av treda hele dag, og så driver og krangler med PC-en I 2 timer.
That we were given. So, Zane Clay, I think everyone just needs to buckle up for the next few weeks because I think how things go with the Directors Guild is going to be extremely telling, especially when it comes to the negotiations with the actors afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. Buckle up. Marissa Parra, thank you.
Coming up, the critical vote that could set up the availability of the first over-the-counter birth control drug.
Så jævla bra, Fusion. Dritbra.
Snapshot. There's a precarious situation in this tiny village in Switzerland, and you can clearly see why. The alpine rock directly outside the community of Brienz is starting to break loose.
People have been ordered to evacuate by Friday night. Geologists have been closely watching this hillside for this possibility for years now, but you can see
Det det beste I seg nå. Det her ikke noe trading nå. Det bare sånn gambling på hvem som kjøper for close ikke. Det her har ikke noe trading å gjøre. Det som vi ser nå. Det bare sånn. Det kan gå 50-50. Men det på dagtid I dag, det var herre, det var jævla kult da. Det var morsomt når vi tradet bare. Det var jævla morsomt.
Schwartz, and here are the stories we're watching tonight. Storms keep coming here in California. Some of the big headlines trending like crazy on social media. This is what my voice sounds like when I clone it. That wasn't me. You gotta see this. Stay tuned now, weeknights on NBC News Now.
Your music is so familiar. What do you think when people start humming back your tunes? How you doing, Lester?
Få ta en strek der, liksom. Faen, kjedelig.
NBC News, streaming free now.
We are following some breaking news this hour. An FDA panel has voted unanimously to recommend the first ever over-the-counter birth control pill.
That's right, but some experts on the panel have raised concerns about the drug's safety and efficacy. Joining us now to talk about this is NBC News senior medical correspondent Dr. John Torres. Thank you for being here. So first off, what does today's decision mean, and how does this drug work? Who should be using it, and maybe who shouldn't be?
So today's decision, a little bit of a surprise, because up until now, the FDA has been talking about how they weren't sure about the studies that were done behind this. Even though this prescription pill has been here since 1973, they were worried that women wouldn't be able to understand the labels on it and how to take it appropriately without a prescription. And so what this means is now we have this universal opinion from the FDA advisory committees. Two different committees unanimously voted in favor of this. It'll now go to the FDA, and the FDA will decide if they're going to follow that advice and move forward with this.
Should everyone take this?
Not everyone. And there are certain people who shouldn't take this, particularly women who have breast cancer or who have had breast cancer, women who have cirrhosis, which is an issue with the liver or liver-type disease, those with unexplained bleeding, and if you're taking medications for seizures or tuberculosis.
One thing I wondered about, if this goes through and it can be on store shelves, you know, there's quite a cultural debate going on in this country around abortion and contraception. Could some states actually block it and say we're not going to let it be sold?
This is going to be a hold on to your hat kind of period here, because right now there's a debate between most people think that the federal government, the FDA's decision overrides state decisions, but a lot of states, particularly those that lean GOP, are saying, no, we can override the federal decisions. Courts are going to determine that.
Dr. John, so many women use contraception. When would this specific over-the-counter pill be made available?
And again, the FDA commissioner now decides based on this vote that he got from his advisory committee. He'll go ahead and look at this and then say, you know, probably late summer when it starts, when he decides, if he decides for it, it should be on the shelves right away.
And in like regular drugstores and
regular drugstores, it could be just about anywhere.
Oh, wow. Well, I'm sure this will be impactful. This is a huge development from the FDA. Dr. John Torres, thank you so much.
You bet.
And this Sunday will be an extra special Mother's Day for one New York mom.
She had been diagnosed with breast cancer during COVID, but then came a big and very welcome surprise. Rana Navini with our NBC station in New York has the story.
In March 2020, Wesleyan Cespedes was newly engaged, just 30 years old with no family history of breast cancer. Even so, she found herself at the Dubin Breast Center at Mount Sinai.
It was a shock for us to get this news. You know, you're in your blissful moments of planning a wedding, and then now it comes to a halt because now you have to figure out what next.
Diagnosed with triple-negative breast cancer, a subtype seen more often in Black or younger women. For Wesleyan, it was the start of a years-long journey, including chemo, radiation, and surgery, all during COVID shutdowns.
Going through cancer in a pandemic, it's a lot. Will I survive this, especially it being stage 3 cancer?
During her battle for survival, Wesleyan and her husband, Emmanuel, got married. Wesleyan's 16-year-old daughter by their side. But Wesleyan's real dream was to have a baby.
Unfortunately, this was at the height of the pandemic, and the fertility preservation centers were pretty much closed down.
Doctors Amy Tierston and Elisa Port were in charge of Wesleyan's care.
You put one foot in front of the other and you just do it, right?
And last year, she got the welcome news. Her cancer is in remission.
Breast cancer in 2023 is now extremely treatable and curable. We have so many reasons for optimism.
Last July, Wesleyan made an appointment with a fertility doctor. But after that visit,
they called and confirmed, like, hey, you're pregnant. Your hormone levels are way up.
You were pregnant at that appointment?
I was pregnant at that appointment. I just didn't know. You don't see the lights? You like lights.
Anais Cespedes is now almost 2 months old. And today, she's meeting the doctors who saved her mom's life.
When I was crying, when I felt hopeless, they were there to encourage me, support me, give me all the resources that I need. When I look at Anais, I think about everything coming full circle and basking in the blessings that life has given me.
A miracle, she says. Oh, so pretty. And this Mother's Day, a renewed sense of gratitude.
I fought to be here, and so I just want to be the best mom that I can be for her.
For NBC News Daily, I'm Rana Novini.
a true miracle, and she
love
really
it.
Där träffade jag
overcame
bra
the
då.
odds there.
Yeah, I did a story recently in Chicago with another family similar to this, where the woman had breast cancer and actually was at risk for ovarian and had her ovaries removed. But the point is that she was able to preserve her fertility and had twins eventually.
We love it. And Mother's
and they
Day.
wanted to spread the message that if you have breast cancer, it doesn't mean that you're never ever going to be able to have children.
No, absolutely.
Nu är
There's
det
so much
gråd.
technology and public health
It's
measures
changing
that can protect
fast.
women for that. So there's more NBC News Daily ahead. Thanks for watching.
You're watching NBC News Daily.
Nå er jeg short, hvis noen lurer på det. Plugins.
NBC News, streaming free now.
We're back now from Las Vegas. From Seattle, Guatemala City. From Wilmington. I was in space in Texas. From Normandy, from Surfside, Florida. Thank you for watching, everyone.
As it turns out, the Beehive will travel. Beyonce is about to go out on a big tour.
It's true, but as you can imagine, those tickets can cost a pretty penny, and now some crazy in love fans have found a way around those high prices. NBC's Blaine Alexander explains.
Beyonce fans rejoice. After 5 long years, the Queen Bee is back, kicking off her first major tour since 2018. But with demand sky high, the race to get tickets can be a little, well, soul-crushing.
And I just couldn't get a pre-sale code. And it was just like so much drama.
Lonnell Williams had zero luck stateside, so he decided to upgrade his search and look overseas, ultimately flying from Atlanta to Stockholm for tonight's show. There, his floor seat in Club Renaissance, a VIP section, cost him $400. That same ticket in Atlanta, now resale only, going for nearly $1,500. That's more than what he's paying for airfare, hotel, and food combined. Same story with June Joseph and her sister Karen. They say they saved nearly $3,000 on VIP seats by flying from New York to France.
I'm so excited. I'm working on my outfits now.
Renaissance tickets are more affordable in Midwestern venues like Kansas City, where the cheapest nosebleed seat is about $70, including fees. But it's a different story in bigger cities. At MetLife Stadium near New York, the cheapest seat from a reseller is nearly $270, plus more than $50 in fees. It's why some members of the Hive have this word of advice.
If you don't have a passport, get a passport, because Beyonce is going to slay it everywhere she goes.
And guys, this tour is already projected to be record-breaking. Some projections say she could rake in more than $275 million. That would be her highest-grossing tour to date. Back to you.
Okay, thank you. And Zinkley would like one of those tickets,
Count
please.
me in, please.
I would too,
I
but you're a
beg.
super fan.
Yeah, but let's go together.
Okay, all right. Anybody out there got tickets for us? Let's
us
take a
know.
look at some of the other stories that are trending right now.
That's right. The University of Georgia's football team is declining an invitation to the White House. The Bulldogs defeated the TCU Horned Frogs in the College Football National Championship. They were offered the opportunity to celebrate their victory with President Biden, but in what some are calling a political snub, the school declined the invitation. The Georgia Athletics Department released a statement saying the team will not be able to make the trip because of scheduling conflicts.
Prince is being honored in his home state of Minnesota with a 7-mile stretch of highway named after him. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz made the honor official on Tuesday, signing the bill into law. The stretch runs by Prince's former home and recording studio. Walz used a pen.
Sett gevinst så ska jag se någon på med.
Of course, but there was no little red Corvette to be found.
Ah, too bad. Well, the daughter of legendary Wheel of Fortune co-host Pat Sajak is filling in on the TV show. Maggie Sajak is turning the letters tonight. That's because the show's usual co-host, Vanna White, is actually a contestant on tonight's broadcast. Okay, that's what we call an about face or something. Of Celebrity Wheel of Fortune, and she is a true celebrity.
No, she is. So Celebrity Wheel of Fortune. Yeah, totally.
Good track.
Okay, go Vanna White. Police in New Jersey are investigating if an object that came crashing into a home is a meteorite. Authorities say the object, which is about 4 inches by 6 inches, you see it there? It came down on a family's roof earlier this week. Nobody was hurt, the police say, but they're working to try to confirm that it was related to a meteor shower.
Ah, interesting.
That'd be a little scary. You hear this big clunk on your roof.
And it's a meteor. Huh. And who's a good boy? According to judges at the Westminster Dog Show, this guy is. The dog named Buddy Holly won Best in Show at the Westminster Kennel Club Dog Show. Buddy is a so-called PBGV hound, and his win was quite the upset. Kate, get it?
Oh, I get it. PBGV hound.
Yeah, many were expecting Winston, the French bulldog, to take home the top prize, but alas, some things just are a little rough, Kate.
Oh, stop. With the puns, but I love. Can we put the picture up again? He's behind us. He's right there.
Yeah.
Oh, he's so cute. All right, everybody loves cheese and chocolate, right?
Yes, but maybe answer that question after you hear this story. Confectioner Comparte has joined forces with Heinz Kraft's Velveeta to make Truffles. Basically, they look like Velveeta's pasta shells, but they have chocolate and cheese. They also have an outer coating of white chocolate infused with Velveeta cheese.
And they're $25 for 5. I don't know about that one. Somebody try them and let us know.
Yeah, we'll pass for now. Thanks for watching NBC
God gevinst.
Daily.
Då är en träd till då. Nå hentet jeg 2500 nå nettopp. Shorta på nytt. Nei, jeg ser heller ikke noe grunn til at det skal gå opp nå. Men det er close, Jakob, og da kan folk gjøre mye rart. Nå er det stengt.
Hey, podcast fans. Ready to unlock our true crime mysteries? Try Dateline Premium on Apple Podcasts. You'll get early access to originals, plus bonus content, and everything is ad-free. So head to Apple Podcasts now to subscribe.
I'm Gotti Schwartz, and here are the stories we're watching tonight. Storms keep coming here in California.
Jeg dekker meg, så er pluss i dag. Jeg gidder ikke... Jeg ikke ligge over natta. Så har jeg null kontroll.
Stay tuned now, weeknights on NBC News Now.
If it's Wednesday, it's a tale of two emergencies after President Biden and top congressional leaders failed to strike a deal on raising the debt limit, and a record number of migrants are apprehended at the border as Title 42 restrictions expire tomorrow. Plus, the former president's friends and foes react after a jury finds him liable for sexual abuse and defamation as the Republican presidential frontrunner faces a deepening web of legal issues. And chaos at the courthouse as Congressman George Santos is arrested and arraigned in federal court after being criminally charged with wire fraud, money laundering, and stealing public funds.
Ute. Da er jeg pluss for dagen. Ikke så mye som jeg var. Jeg var i pluss med nesten 13 000. Og endte opp med å være pluss 3,5. Jeg fikk den der i trynet i stad.
After yesterday's talks between the president and congressional leaders got heated and went nowhere. The other crisis is at the border as government agencies scramble to respond to a surge of migrants with pandemic-era restrictions set to expire tomorrow at midnight. Border officials are being pushed to the breaking point. NBC News was the first to report that because of the volume of migrants, Customs and Border Protection officials will be...
Ja, det helt... Det faen meg fucka huet, ass. Det har vært en sykt kul dag, da. Det har vært en jævla fet dag, da. Har liksom gjort det jævla bra helt på close her. Du rota til noe jævlig på close.
It comes even as U.S. troops arrive at the southern border to assist with the surge. Speaking today, Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas urged migrants not to make the dangerous journey while blaming Congress for the nation's broken immigration system.
I cannot overemphasize that our current situation is the outcome of
den bevegelsen der, da. Gjorde dritbra. Og så klarte jeg å få den rett i trynet. Det var morsomt, da. Det var jævla festlig.
Of Congress's decision not to provide us with the resources we need and that we requested.
And while the White House is preparing for the end of Title 42 tomorrow, it's also trying to navigate an intensifying impasse with House Republicans over raising...
Folk gærne som kjøper på de tallene. Det helt sprøtt.
...in yesterday's Oval Office meeting, which a source described as tense and serious.
Everybody in this meeting reiterated the positions they were at. I didn't see any new movement.
Jeg short nå, bare så det er sagt. Jeg klarte ikke å gi meg. Folk jo gærne. Folk faen meg gærne.
They're literally not figuratively holding the economy hostage by threatening to default on our nation's debt that we've already incurred over the last couple hundred years, unless we give in to their threats and demands as to what they think we should be doing with regard to the budget. This would be incredibly damaging.
I'm joined now by two of my NBC News colleagues, CNBC's senior White House correspondent Kayla Tausche and Capitol Hill correspondent Ali Vitale. Thanks to both of you for being here, for all of your great reporting at all hours of the day and night around this. Kayla, let me start with you.
Jeg tredje morgen, men da i morgen må jeg holde meg til regelen. Jeg skal ikke tredje mot close. Jeg gjorde så jævlig bra da, så jeg ble bare sånn der, ok, fuck, nå fortsetter jeg til close. Jeg visste at det her kom til å skje.
Well, some might be surprised, Kristen, to hear that the president's message was exactly the same as it was last week before that meeting with the top 4 congressional leaders took place just yesterday, even though they sat down with their chiefs of staff for an hour yesterday, and their staffs have followed up since then in lengthy conversations about what will come next. President Biden really didn't budge off the stump speech where he was blaming Republicans for holding the economy hostage, for introducing some dangerous scenarios and not not taking default off the table. Interestingly, President Biden himself and the Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell yesterday both said that the U.S. would not default under any circumstance, but House Speaker Kevin
Det här kommer
McCarthy
att
did not
grus
say
ned,
that, which
men
is why
jag
you're seeing President
får höra på
Biden
nytt sen bara.
attack him on that front. But the challenge, Kristen, of course, is what's going to happen behind the scenes. What the Office of Legislative Affairs and the congressional offices of those four leaders can actually identify as middle ground going forward, because they're trying to find trillions of dollars in cost savings that will satisfy Republicans through the spending process. And certainly what the Biden administration has offered up so far is just tens of billions of dollars. So there's a long way to go, and there's a very short time frame to do it. And the president's public message, at least, is still very disciplined.
You're absolutely right. And the public messaging coming from both sides has been so fascinating. Allie, you had a chance to question Speaker McCarthy yesterday. He came out swinging from that meeting. Didn't seem like there was any real progress. What were your takeaways from the meeting, Allie, and what are your sources telling you today about any potential baby steps that may be made behind the scenes with the staffers who huddled today?
Yeah, Kristen, because it doesn't sound like the core four congressional members paired with the president made much progress in the room. It sounds like, from what our sources told us yesterday, and from the readouts that we got from both the speaker, the president, and the Senate minority leader, that everyone was really dug in their positions. In fact, the readouts that we got from our sources in the room made this meeting sound pretty acrimonious. We heard President Biden come out of it saying that McCarthy was pretty angry during that meeting. Our other sources described this as tense. Others told you and I that McCarthy was, in their words, disrespectful of the president. And we know that there was one word that came up that
Dagens
really, I think,
ute.
speaks
Nå må jeg holde meg straks nå. Så taper jeg alt jeg har tjent i dag. Takk for meg, jeg snakkes i morgen.